Dexter ran through fields so wide, chasing dreams with endless pride. Saved him from the stormy tide. Now he runs by angels' side, barked at shadows in the rain, never knew a day of pain. Now in heaven, free from chain, we'll see you, Dexter, once again. Raise a toast for loyal friends whose love and spirit never ends. Dexter's journey's just begun. In doggy heaven, there's no end. He could sense the love we shared. In his eyes, the world lay bare. Now he leaps without a care in doggy paradise somewhere. No more tears and no more strife. In the stars he finds his life, running fast through fields of light. Dexter shines forever bright. Raise a toast for loyal friends whose love and spirit never ends. Dexter's journey's just begun. In doggy heaven, there's no end.
Yo, folks, welcome to the final part, the trial against Domingo Rodriguez in the death of Dexter. Domingo Rodriguez, if convicted, is facing up to 5 years in prison for cruelty to animals and illegal disposal. And so this is final part. We will go through, let's see here, how much is it? Well, between 3 and 4 hours. Now, verdict was yesterday. So if you want to see it beforehand, go right ahead. But we are not caught up here yet. So please, no spoilers in chat for those who have waited to see this over here. So, by the way, when I asked Suno.com to make a song about Dexter, I think that is probably the best song they ever produced for me. This is streamed via Fox 13 Tampa Bay. They are a bit new to this, so they cut out a bit early and cut in a bit late with witnesses. So, as yesterday, we enter in the middle of testimony. So, yeah. First of all, folks over at Rumble, hello. Good to have you here. Folks over at X, hi. Good to have you here. And folks here on YouTube, hello. Welcome to the show.
No, I don't recall.
Permission to approach the clerk?
Granted.
And permission to publish was already been entered into evidence of stage 1.
Granted.
Looking to your, again at the screen,
Oh,
publishing states Exhibit 1. Do you ever recall seeing a dog that looks like this or this dog?
No, I do not.
Do you recall at that time ever hearing anybody yelling out for their lost dog?
No, I do not. And if I can expound,
Sure.
on May 10th, I was working, but I can hear if somebody would be outside calling. And I'm actually, when I wake up, I make my coffee, I sit on my front porch with my coffee and smoke until I start working at 8:30 a.m. On the next Saturday, I actually had been to Home Depot the night before and bought a whole bunch of new plants to plant in memory for my mother for Mother's Day. So I was out early in the morning, Saturday morning, starting, to get my dirt together and my plants and mix my fertilizers.
And despite being out, did you ever recall anybody yelling for a dog Dexter
No,
or the name Dexter?
I never heard the name Dexter at all. And
No further questions.
Cross.
You were given questions in preparation for your testimony here today before you walked into the courtroom,
yes,
and who gave those to you?
I received them in an email
From who?
from the attorney,
The one that was just
Attorney
asking
Belton.
questions?
Yes,
So you already know what you're about to be asked.
pretty much, yes.
Now, how many dogs are in that neighborhood of yours?
At least 8 that I know their names of and that I see walking all the time.
Are any of those dogs black in color?
Carolyn's dog has some black markings. Chloe, who is a little teeny tiny dog, she has some black on her face. And my other neighbor around the corner, Lisa, both of her dogs have some black markings.
You've never seen Dexter, this dog in question that you just showed the photo
No,
of in
not
person?
Dexter.
You've never seen that dog in person?
No.
Nothing from
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You may step down. You're excused. Jay, call your next witness, please.
The state calls Lisa Bordeaux.
okay, that was that. Witness only there to say, never heard anybody call out for a missing dog. Showing if he actually went missing, well, I can't imagine if you adopt a dog and it runs away the day after you adopt it. I would be frantic. I would be everywhere. I would be knocking doors. But Mr. Rodriguez, nothing.
Raise your right hand and repeat the oath.
Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
Yes, I do.
You'll just have a seat right here. You're going to pull the chair all the way forward and speak in a loud voice for the court.
Okay, thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you, Your Honor. Good afternoon, I think we are. Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your name for the court reporter?
Lisa Bordeaux, Lisabordeaux.
Ms. Bordeaux, where do you live?
3301 66 Way North, St. Pete, Florida, 33710.
Do you currently own that home?
Yes,
How long have you lived at that home?
over 30 years.
Does anybody live at the home with you?
No,
Do you currently work?
no, I just recently retired from a job for over 30 years, working from home.
When you were working, okay, so you were working from home prior to that?
Yep.
Were you working from home in May 2024?
Yes,
Now, do you generally keep a daily routine?
yes,
Let me ask, actually, I asked you if anybody lives at your home. Do you have any pets?
yes, I do. Two.
How many pets? And what kind of animals are they?
2 French bulldogs.
Do you have a daily routine that you normally keep?
Yes,
And does that involve your French bulldogs?
yes.
Tell me about that. Do they get walks?
So, yeah, every day, 2 or 3 times a day. I'll wake up, get coffee. I feed my stray cats in the front, and then I'll take my dogs out in the morning, depending on the weather, in the afternoon, and definitely before we go to bed.
Is there a time generally that you wake up?
4:35.
If you,
Early riser?
if you are wondering about what is the mumbling in the background, that is a translator translating to Domingo Rodriguez.
Every day?
Every day.
Even on weekends?
Yes.
What do you do when you first wake up normally?
Get coffee, and then I go feed the cats because they're waiting for me and at my screen door.
By the time that you feed the cats, around what time is that more or less?
Playing in
that's early,
1.25.
5:36.
What time do the dogs eat?
7.
Would this have all been the same back in 2024?
Yes.
Now, having lived in the neighborhood for a while, have you had the opportunity to become acquainted with your neighbors?
Yes.
Do you know whether any of your neighbors have pets?
Yes.
Have you ever had the opportunity to hear anybody outside looking for a lost pet?
Yes. They've even come to my house.
Now, are you familiar with any of your neighbors' routines?
Yes.
Do you have security cameras around your home?
Yes.
Has this enabled you to kind of familiarize yourself with their routines, whether deliberately or not?
No, I don't think that would make me familiar with my neighbors, but it's just secure for me in my house.
I mean, do you ever see your neighbors on your cameras?
Oh, yes.
Do you have a neighbor that you know by the name of Domingo Rodriguez?
Yes.
Do you see that neighbor here today?
Yes.
Could you please indicate where, to the left or to the right, is he seated in the courtroom, and identify an article of clothing that he's wearing?
To the right, a dark tie and suit.
At this time, the state would ask that the record reflect that the witness has identified the defendant.
Defense?
We agree that she's identified.
All right, record reflect the court identification of the defendant.
Permission to approach the clerk.
Granted.
Sorry about that. Permission to publish states 8C and 8B.
Yes.
Looking at states 8B, you could just look to your right at the screen. Do you recognize that home?
Yes.
Do you know whose home that is?
Yes.
Is that the defendant's home?
Yes, it is.
Looking at 8C, do you recognize, let's back out a little bit. Do you recognize that blue home?
Yes.
Is that the defendant's home?
Yes.
Do you recognize the brick driveway that is in the bottom corner of the photo?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize that driveway?
That's my house.
Is this a view of the defendant's home sort of from the street in front of your home?
Yes, it is.
How many doors down from the defendant do you live?
2 doors down to the right.
Now, how long have you known or remembered the defendant to live at that blue home?
I would say over 10 years.
What, if anything, have you come to learn about the routines of the people at that home?
For the most part, I know their routines, their comings and goings, cars, just like I would anyone on the block, really.
Is that just due to being close to the area, or are you
Just-
outside?
Just
often?
because living there, walking my dogs, doing yard work
Tell me about your yard work. Do you do yard work often?
every day.
What type of yard work do you do?
And I don't like it. I do gardening, yard work. So I like being outside.
You do like it, you said.
Yes.
Okay. Sorry, I just misheard. Are you ever out there pulling weeds?
Yes.
How many hours, I don't know, a day or a week would you estimate being outside doing the yard work?
Oh, I'm in and out all day long with the yard work between my front yard and my backyard.
Is that even more so after being retired?
Yes.
Now, have you had the opportunity, being just a few houses down, to observe the vehicle that the defendant drives?
Yes.
What vehicle is that?
The gray truck.
And how often do you see that vehicle going by?
I mean, I see it going by a lot. I mean, I know he works, so back and forth.
How do you know that he works?
Just because I can see his schedule. He goes to work in the morning and comes home.
What time does the vehicle typically leave in the morning?
I would say early morning, 6:30, 7,
And what time does it normally come back?
around 5.
Is that specifically, is that more or less just weekdays or weekends as well ever?
It seems to be like Monday through Thursday and maybe Fridays off. I've noticed him on Fridays, he's off.
Now, are you familiar with the other vehicles that may be at the home?
Yes.
Do you know anybody else at the home to operate the vehicle that you've seen the defendant operating?
No.
Do those other vehicles, who operates those ones if you know?
His son lives there. He drives the truck.
What kind of truck does the son drive?
A big white truck.
What other vehicles have you seen at that property?
There's another Nissan there. There's
that
a
the
white
same-
4-door
Go
car. There's a gray car. There's a red car and a little black car 4-door.
Have you often or ever seen the defendant driving any of those other vehicles?
No.
To your knowledge, have you ever seen, specifically in May 2024, did you ever see the defendant bring home a dog?
No.
Permission to approach the clerk?
Yes.
Permission to publish these exhibit 1.
Granted.
Looking up at the screen again, just a moment. Now, today, do you know who this dog is?
Today, yes, I do. Yeah.
Back in May 2024, early or mid-May 2024, did you know who the dog was?
No.
Have you ever seen this dog out in your neighborhood?
No.
Have you ever seen this dog with a defendant?
No.
Be it May 2024 or any other time,
Have you ever heard anybody out in your neighborhood yelling for Dexter?
No.
Have you ever had the defendant or anybody from his home approach or indicate to you that they are looking for a lost dog?
No.
And back on May 11th, the Saturday, what time would you have woken up?
4:30, 5 o'clock.
Now, do you have cameras in your home?
Yes.
How many cameras do you have?
6.
What type of cameras are they?
3 flood ring cameras and then some ring doorbells.
Now, how do you access those? Are you able to access the cameras?
Yes.
How so?
Through my ring app.
And when you say app, is that a phone application?
Yes.
And what does your phone application show you with respect to the cameras? What information?
It shows me all of my cameras, live view, continuously live view, and any type of motion that's coming through.
Now,
It'll give me a notification.
are you only able to see the cameras when you go into your app, or can you ever go back and see what they've recorded?
I can go back and see.
Do you know if all of the recordings are saved 24/7, or is it restricted to certain types of recordings?
Repeat the question.
Do you have 24/7 video footage recorded without
Yes.
any breaks?
No, I'm not sure. I'm actually not sure.
Does your app display video clips that reflect motion?
Yes.
And tell me about that. Do you know what that means?
When there's motion going by, it'll give me a notification saying that there's motion.
And do those motion clips, do they store or do they delete?
No, they store because I can go back into history
And do you have to manually store them, or they're automatically storing on their own?
automatically.
Back in May 2024, did you have those cameras?
Yes.
And do any of those cameras face the front of your home?
Yes.
Which camera?
My ring floodlight in the front.
Any other cameras show the front of the home?
No,
Now, for this case, as part of the investigation, was it requested of you to review your camera footage?
yes,
For what dates, if you recall?
the 10th and the 11th
Did you do
in the
that?
morning. Yeah.
Did you
Yes.
do that? And were you able to find any saved videos?
Yes.
What did you do with those videos?
I sent them to the detective who requested them.
Do you remember how they were sent? Did you receive a link?
Yes, I received a link that he sent me and I forwarded it on to him.
Do you use that link? Is it a download, or how does the link work in order to help you send those videos?
I downloaded it.
Now, when you pass along those videos, did they have file names?
Yes, I think so, yeah.
Do you know did you change any of those file names?
I wouldn't know how to do that.
Now, this floodlight camera, have you ever had any issues with it?
No,
Do you know that is there a timestamp?
yes,
Is that timestamp accurate?
yes,
How do you know that?
because I can see on the camera every day when I look at it.
And-
the time's right there.
Okay. And you've never looked at the camera and thought, oh, that doesn't look right?
No,
Back in May 2024, was that the same? No issues with the camera?
no issues.
And the timestamp was good?
Yes,
Now, these videos that you downloaded, or I guess it would possibly upload, do those videos, did you change anything in the content of the videos?
no,
Did you edit anything?
no,
Do you know how to do that?
no.
Permission to approach the clerk?
Yes.
Retrieving what's been pre-marked for identification as State's Exhibit 16. May I approach the witness?
You may.
I'm approaching you with what's been pre-marked as State's Exhibit 16. Do you recognize this?
Yes,
How do you recognize this?
that's videos of my Ring camera.
Is this a flash drive with the videos?
Yes,
And did you review the videos that are on this flash drive?
yes, I did.
Do you recognize this flash drive as one that you've previously reviewed, perhaps because of its color?
Yes,
Is the video footage that is on this flash drive, does that fairly and accurately depict the video footage that you provided to the deputy?
yes,
Is it the exact same footage you
it
provided?
is the exact same.
At this time, the state will move into evidence, State's Exhibit 16.
Yeah, she is a very observant person. This is the third neighbor testifying, and all of them seem to be very observant. I'm guessing it's an HOA with very nosy neighbors. So, yeah, and it is Florida, so chances are it isn't they lived in an HOA. There are a lot of them in Florida. And all of this goes towards the defendant's more or less lying to the cops where he was, what he did, telling the jury if this newly adopted dog actually ran away, how come the defendant nor his family was never out searching for?
Or admission to State's Exhibit 16.
Defense? Objection, Judge, lack of authentication, suicide as witness theory, accumulated.
Overruled, it'll be admitted as marked.
Permission to publish.
Granted.
Now, while we prepare the videos, did you review the videos that you sent to the deputy?
Yes,
Did you notice anything that piqued your interest?
no,
Did you notice the defendant in the videos?
no,
Do you believe that he is depicted in those videos?
no,
Did you notice any dogs, any dog that looks like Dexter in the video?
no,
We're just gonna look at just a few of these. Looking at State's Exhibit. It was pre-marked as 17A, because it's gonna be from 16. Now, looking at this footage, do you see a timestamp here?
yes,
Where's the timestamp on the screen?
on the bottom corner right here,
And what vehicles can you see out front?
my 3 vehicles.
Now, based on the location of your home, does your camera show the defendant's home?
No,
But does it show the street that is in front of both of your homes?
yes,
Pressing play. Do you see anybody walking in the frame here?
Yes,
Do you know who that is?
I believe it's the male person. So probably pick up motion there, yeah.
Now, is this essentially what both of the videos, the activity, the type of activity that you see on these videos?
Yes.
Do you ever see anybody running around seeming to look for something?
Do I ever?
Is anybody ever on the film? Do you ever have you seen anybody seemingly looking for something? Appears to look for something?
Yeah, you mean in the past?
No, in the videos you provided.
Oh, no, no.
Now, at night, is the camera also able to capture videos?
Yes,
And despite it being dark out, can you still see any motion?
yes.
Do your videos have audio, to your knowledge?
Oh, yeah, yeah, they do, yes.
And when you downloaded this video, did you ever hear anybody calling out Dexter?
No.
No further questions at this time.
Thank you. Cross-examination?
Yes, Judge, my question.
Yes.
Good afternoon. Are you friends with all your neighbors?
Yeah, pretty much.
Are you friends with Mr. Domingo?
No,
Now, in your neighborhood, it's covered in flyers and yard signs regarding this case, correct?
a lot, yes,
They have my client's picture on it.
yes,
They have Dexter's picture on it.
yes,
Do you have one of those yard signs in front of your house?
yes,
You testified that you didn't see my client searching for his dog on May 11th
correct.
and that he didn't show up on those cameras.
No,
He also didn't show up on those cameras leaving with the dog that morning, correct? Is that a
no,
no?
that is a no.
You weren't watching his house every moment of that day, right?
No.
So it's fair to say that he may have passed by at one point and you just didn't see him,
I think my cameras would have caught it.
but they didn't catch him driving by.
No,
Now, you said you provided the state, and the state just showed us some video footage of your security cameras. What date did the authorities ask you to provide them this video footage?
the 10th and the 11th in the morning.
Yeah, the defense, when they are cross-examining, they, in my opinion, are just searching for anything, any type of information they can use. So far, they are out of luck with that one.
Moment to confer, Judge?
Yes.
No further question, Judge.
Can you redirect?
No, you're.
All right, thank you. Ma'am, you sit down, you're excused. State, call your next witness, please. Yes.
And we have a sidebar. Dun, dun, dun. Sidebar counter 8. Yes, on this show you get sidebar counter. I like this judge, Keith Meyer. Yes. He takes decisions on the bench. He doesn't. I haven't seen him punt something forward. Yeah, if you don't get notifications on YouTube or Rumble, follow me on X because I will post there when I stream. That way you might get better notifications.
Yeah.
I got 10 putts in a row in the beehive.
You guys did what?
10 putts in a row in the beehive from about 5 feet out using
Very
the
good.
Scotty Scheffler claw grip.
Look,
Okay. Skipping. Not much happening. All right. Yeah. Let's go to the next one.
You have a variety of things.
And again, they cut off the camera and then on again in the middle of testimony. This time, a sheriff or deputy of sorts. Let me just check so I don't show any pictures of Dexter. Nope, not on this one. Dun, dun, dun. Let's move on.
It can be a text message that includes an emoji.
You sound
or a
okay, by
picture
the
or
way.
Video. It could be a FaceTime. It could be internet usage. It could just be an app checking in to make sure it has the latest software. It could also be the device checking in with the network to verify that it is authorized to access the network and that it is relying on the closest and best signal to the tower.
Did the records that you received in this case also include cell tower locations?
Yes, it did.
Permission to approach the clerk?
yes.
That's an attorney who does not know he's on camera.
And the Surgeon Defense Counsel has been remarked as State Exhibit 15. Pre-marked as States 19 and States 20. Permission to approach the witness?
Yes.
I'm approaching with you with what's been pre-marked for identification as States 19, A through E. Can you please identify what that is?
That is the CD containing an electronic copy of the files I received from T-Mobile.
Did you review the files specifically on the CD?
Yes, ma'am.
And did you confirm that those are in fact, the copies you received?
Yes.
Do the copies that you received include a copy of States Exhibit 20?
Yes, they did.
And what is States Exhibit 20?
That is a certification from T-Mobile stating that the records are from them provided are true and accurate.
Ultimately, did you create a map in this case?
Yes, I did.
Looking at what's remarked as State's Exhibit 15, do you recognize that?
Yes, I do.
How do you recognize that?
That is the map I created.
All right. At this time, the state would seek to move into evidence as a business record. States 19, remarked as States 19 and States 20.
Defense,
No objection based upon the business certification.
it'll be admitted as marked.
Now let's talk a little bit about cell phone towers. Can you explain for the members of the jury what they are?
Cell phone towers are basically the locations that your phone is connecting to. It can be a physical structure such as a water tower or a giant metal grid that then has sectors attached to them, and that is actually what your phone is connecting with.
What is a cell site?
A cell site is also a cell sector.
Okay.
That is
Cell
where
site
the
information
transmission is occurring.
Showing
That's the technology
where
that is
the
used.
defendant actually was.
Speaking generally, when a cell phone, any cell phone, is powered on, is it interacting with cell sites?
Yes.
Can you explain that a little bit?
Your phone is constantly connecting to the tower, to the network, to make sure that it is authorized to use the network, that it is using the best and closest signal.
Again, speaking generally, when someone makes an outgoing call from a cell phone, what happens as it relates to those cell sites?
The cell phone connects to a cell site that is then transmitted to the base transceiver, which connects to your mobile provider. If the call is going to another network, so if you are on AT&T and you are calling somebody on Verizon, it will then transfer to Verizon's network. It will locate their cellular device on their network, transfer to that geographical region, to the base transceiver, to the sector or the cell site, and then it will communicate to the phone, connecting the communication.
Is this the same process for an incoming call?
Yes.
When a call is placed, is there a record of what cell site is carried by?
Most times, yes.
So in this case, did you map a communication? We talked about the map. Did you do that specifically for 727-546-7083?
Yes.
And based on the T-Mobile records, is that what you used to map the cell site locations?
Yes.
May I approach the witness?
You may.
Approaching with what you've previously viewed and what has been pre-marked as States 15, still for identification. Could you please take a look at that? And can you explain, is there a legend on that map?
There is a legend, yes.
What does a legend include?
The legend includes the phone number of the device that was mapped.
What else do we see on the map? What other sections does it have?
There are tower locations. From those tower locations, there are lines that come off of it that shows the azimuth or the direction that the call came from. And there are also annotations with the time and type of communication with that tower.
Now, in preparing for your testimony today, did you review this map?
I did.
And in preparing, in reviewing the map, did you notice anything about the map?
There was a typo in one of the time annotations.
And can you tell me about that typo?
When we create the annotations, the time comes in standard time. So if it's 8 a.m., it will say 8:00:00 a.m. We standardize that to 24-hour military time, where if it was in the PM hours, it would say 13, 14, 15 instead of 2, 3, 4 as the hour. And doing that conversion, one of the times was missed to convert from saying 12 to saying 00 as representing midnight.
And using the pen that I left there, could you please cross out the time that has the typo and right next to it the correct or the consistent formatted time? With that correction, are the times there and the rest of the information depicted on that map, are they a fair and accurate representation of the information that you analyzed and mapped out?
Yes, it is.
At this time, the state seeks to move into evidence with what's pre-marked as States Exhibit 15 as States 15.
Defense,
No objection.
it will be admitted as marked.
Version published, States 15.
Granted.
Okay, looking at States Exhibit 15 on the screen, what time frame is depicted in this map?
11 p.m. on May 10th to 10 a.m. on May 11th.
Was there a reason that this time frame was selected?
That was the request of the deputy.
Do you essentially just receive requests from deputies, you take the information and generate reports like this?
Yes,
Do you have any idea, any significance of that for this case?
I do not.
Do you know anything about the facts of this case?
I do not.
Now, we see some red dots. What do those red dots indicate?
Those red dots are the tower locations that the device was connected to.
Near some of those red dots, there are, do you see there the two house icons?
Yes,
What do those house icons indicate or represent?
those are two residential addresses.
Were you requested to mark these residential addresses on the map for reference from the deputy?
Yes,
Do you have any knowledge of what those addresses, what their significance may or may not be?
I do not.
Now, where it says data. zoom in here. For example, right here, this data, what does that indicate?
That is a data transmission. So again, that could be that FaceTime, Facebook app usage, or just the phone checking in with the network.
What about outgoing call
That is a phone call placed from the handset device,
and incoming?
a call coming into the device.
After the calls, there are some numbers and seconds. What does that indicate?
That is the duration.
The defense have indicated it might not be the defendant on some of these photos, but at the same time, if she can, this cell phone expert or cell phone officer can show, yeah, he was there, then that is out the window as well.
Of the phone call.
Going back to the two areas.
See how easy a trial is when you have good facts on your side? Yeah. Easy questions, easy answers, move along. When the evidence speaks for itself.
Areas that that we're focused on. Again, those are just addresses that you provided. What do the dots around them indicate?
Those are the towers around the residences that were utilized.
The timing here that we have, is that in any specific order?
It is in chronological order for that tower.
A moment to confirm.
Yes.
No further questions.
Cross?
No problem.
15, state. Second 15.
I apologize.
All right, no cross, state calling next witness?
The state calls Captain Lindsay Martin.
Right, so please. So please get here. Face the clerk, raise your right hand and repeat yes.
Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give will be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth? Yes.
You could just have a seat and pull the chair all the way forward.
Thank you. Good afternoon. Can you please introduce yourself to the jury by spelling your first and last name for the record?
So my name is Lindsay Martin, Lindsey Martin.
Where do you work?
Pinellas County Animal
Next
Services.
witness.
What is your position with Pinellas County Animal Services?
I am the Enforcement Program Manager.
What does that position entail?
So I am essentially the manager of all the animal control officers, and I also handle animal cruelty investigations and dangerous dog investigations.
Within your agency, are you also referred to as Captain Martin?
Yes.
Now, with respect to animal services, do you have knowledge of the adoption process?
Yes.
Let me back up. How long have you been with animal services?
10 years.
And what positions have you had over the years?
I was an animal care assistant where cleaned kennels. Actually started as a volunteer. Then I was an animal care assistant. I was a customer service representative. I was animal control officer 1, animal control officer 2, and now my title is captain.
And is that also a supervisory role?
Yes.
How about, as you were saying, the adoption process? Generally, how does that work?
So Pinellas County Animal Services has an open adoption process. So generally the public can just come into our adoption facility. We have leashes and stuff all over the shelter. They are able to take them out of the kennel themselves, which just ensures to us that that person can properly handle an animal. Take it in the yard, they can come back up front, they want to adopt it. We just make sure that any other pets at home are currently licensed and have rabies vaccines in the county.
Now, with respect to microchips, are all the adoptable animals microchipped?
Yes, ma'am.
And when does that happen?
So some of them come in with microchips already, but most of them come in with no microchips. So they will be microchipped at the time of spay or neuter.
And how does the microchip information change, if any, through the adoption process?
So either way, if we implant it or if an animal comes in with a microchip, as soon as the ownership is changed through the adoption process in our computer system, that microchip is automatically registered with 24-hour pet watch. And so that way that microchip goes back to that person who adopted that animal.
Is it somebody physically at your office who's inputting the new owner's information so that it is then connected with the microchip?
Yes. Yep.
Are you a records custodian?
Yes.
What does that mean?
So when I handle most of the public records requests, and anytime anybody needs records from animal services.
What type of records do those include?
It could be anything from photos, videos, paper, anything from our system, anything anybody needs.
Do you maintain those records?
Yes.
And does that include adoption paperwork?
Yes.
Does that include the microchip paperwork?
Yes.
Do you all maintain records once a adoption has happened? Do you still store those records in your system?
Correct. We also have paper copies as well.
Okay.
Yep.
What generally do the adoption contracts include?
It would just have the adopter name on it. It has the animal information, just some general information on medical, if the animal needs medical attention, how many days they can come to the shelter. They also get a copy of any and all medications, and then all the microchip information that goes back to them. And then there's always signatures on everything.
Now, are you also a custodian of records when it comes to digital evidence or digital information, including the security cameras at animal services?
Yes, I do have access.
What security cameras are available at animal services?
Any and all of them I can look at any time. Yeah.
Okay. And are they inside, outside?
Both.
Were you asked in reference to this case to obtain that footage?
Yes.
Were you given a specific date and time?
Yes.
And did you review that footage?
Yes.
Did you pull that footage ultimately?
Yes.
How did you do that?
So I was able to pull it up, but then I was able to clip snippets, but also the sheriff's office was able to pull it as well, I believe. Yeah.
And when you say you were able to clip snippets, is that based on the request that was given to you?
Yes.
And what system, if you recall, do you use for the video footage?
I'm not 100% sure what the system is called.
Do you use that video footage often?
Yes.
Are you one of the only people who has access? Who has access to that footage?
I believe there's only 4 of us who have access to the video cameras.
And do you have access to, other than cut a video short or keep it long, can you make any other edits to that footage?
No.
In this case, did you make any edits to the footage that you provided to law
No,
enforcement?
ma'am.
Permission to approach the clerk?
Granted.
And I am showing the defense counsel with the pre-marked as states 21, 22, and 23. Permission to approach witness.
Granted.
I'm going to hand you first with the pre-marked as states 21 for identification. Taking a look at that, what is that?
That is the USB drive that should have all the video footage on it.
Did you review the content of that USB drive?
Yes.
And did you indicate on the USB drive anything that, in order to acknowledge that you reviewed the content of the USB drive? Sorry, did you sign the USB drive
Yes.
to say that you watched the
Yes,
videos? Okay. And in watching those videos or in viewing the files on there, are they a fair and accurate depiction of the videos that you provided to law enforcement in this
Yes.
case? Looking at states 22 for identification, can you take a look at that, please? And what are we looking at there?
So this is the registration through 24-hour pet watch from the adoption of Dexter.
Are these records that you have access to as a records custodian?
Yes.
And how are these records kept?
So this physical record is kept in our computer system, and I'm able to pull that anytime.
And is this kept in the normal course of business? Yep. Handing you what's been pre-marked for identification as states 23. Do you recognize that?
Yes.
How do you recognize that?
This is the signed adoption contract from the adoption of Dexter.
Did you pull both states 23 and states 22 and provide it to law enforcement?
Yes.
And is states 23 also kept in the normal course of business?
Yes.
How is this file kept?
So this is kept via paper copy and also in our computer system.
At this time, the state would seek to move into evidence what's been pre-marked as states 21, 22, and 23.
Defense?
I'm gonna have 4 one-hour questions.
Okay.
May I inquire?
Yes.
A microchip number,
Mhm.
is that number generated by Pinellas County Animal Services or 24-hour pet watch?
24-hour pet watch.
In regards to the surveillance system
Mhm.
at Pinellas County Animal Services, do you have knowledge about the operating condition and the capability of the equipment producing the video evidence as it relates to accuracy and reliability?
Like, how do you mean?
Are you aware of the operating condition and its capability to record accurate and reliable evidence?
Yeah, yes.
And are you familiar and have personal knowledge of the procedure employed as it relates to the preparation, testing, operation, and security, the security of the security equipment that generated the video evidence?
No.
Are you a records custodian for 24-hour pet watch?
No.
May I approach, Your Honor?
Yes.
And we have a sidebar. Dun, dun, dun. Sidebar counter 9. Yeah, it is a really, really calm trial. It is as if lawyers can respect each other on both sides. Who knew? Somebody call Lewin. Somebody call Love.
Yeah, the videos are submitted over to Dexter.
The state has no further questions.
Cross?
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
Have you ever met my client in person?
No.
Have you ever seen him with the dog in question?
I did see him on the day of the adoption walking the dog, yes.
Was there any issue with him treating the dog badly?
I don't know history and nothing that I saw.
I'm not asking about history, just what you
Yeah.
observed. I want you to stick to what you personally observed. Did you observe my
No.
client treating the dog in any inappropriate way?
No.
Did you observe him being verbally aggressive towards the dog?
No.
No further questions.
Thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you, ma'am. You may step down. Call your witness, please.
The state calls Nicholas Moran.
Right this way, please. Just gonna stand right here. Face the clerk, raise your right hand and repeat the oath.
Do you swear or affirm the evidence you're about to give is the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth?
I swear.
You can just have a seat right here. Pull the chair all the way forward and speak in a loud voice for the court.
Good afternoon. May I proceed, Your Honor?
Yes.
Could you please introduce yourself, spelling your first and last name?
So my name is Nicholas, Nicholas, Moran, Moran.
Where do you work, Mr. Moran?
I work at Pinellas County Animal Services.
What is your position there?
I'm an animal service customer service representative.
How long have you worked with animal services?
I've worked with animal services for 1.5 years now.
And tell me, what are some of the duties of an animal services customer representative? Did I say that correctly?
Yeah.
Okay.
So an animal services representative working for the county, I'm responsible for the licensing of animals, as well as just keeping up to date, making sure that each and all animals that enter and leave our facility are up to date on their county license, as well as their rabies vaccines. It's also my responsibility to conduct animal adoptions, as well as help out in any other way that we could.
Now, were you working in that capacity back in May 2024?
Yes.
Specifically, were you working on May 10th, 2024?
I was working up front. I believe it was only my first week at a desk. I was still being trained.
And was there somebody with you training?
Yes.
Who was that?
Christine.
And how did she, if any, in any way, how was she training you at that moment?
Well, for the first, I'd say 30 days, I sat alongside her while she was sitting at the desk. And by then I had grown comfortable enough to try to ease into the position, actually sit at the desk, log into my own account, conduct transactions, adoptions, fosters, as well as any license renewals.
And at this point, was she just more letting you take the lead?
Yes.
At any time, did an individual come in that day to adopt a dog?
Yes, there was.
Probably more than one, at least the
Yes.
interested, right? Did you end up meeting a person that you learned was named Domingo Rodriguez?
Yes.
And you see that person here in the courtroom today?
Yes.
Can you please identify them by an article of clothing and the position of them in the courtroom?
Mr. Domingo is sitting on my right side, everybody's left-hand side in a black suit.
And what was your first observation of Mr. Rodriguez?
My first observation of Mr. Rodriguez is that he didn't speak English very well, which is fine.
Let me back you up just a little bit. I'm sorry. When did you see him inside Animal Services? Where did you first see him?
Yes. So when I had first observed Mr. Rodriguez, it was him entering our front door. He was trying to communicate, I believe, with our greeter because he wanted to look at our animals that are available to be adopted. That's when our greeter had motioned for him to just go into the room. I believe we were all using translators at the time on our cell phones, just so he could get a better understanding and to communicate effectively.
And when you say translators, is that like Google Translate or how are you doing
Google
that?
Translator.
How does that work? So do you type something or do you say something?
Just to make sure that what we're trying to communicate with him, we were typing everything out. We weren't speaking it. I believe he was speaking into his phone, and that's when the words were interpreted back to us in English.
Does Google Translate speak back to you?
Yes.
Okay. Or is it possible to just show another person the phone?
It's possible to either play it or show it to us through the text, which I want to say majority of the time was us reading the text.
For the most part, was that working okay?
Yes.
And are there any people at Animal Services, any workers specifically, who speak Spanish?
I believe there's only one.
And was he around at the time? Or were they around at the time?
They were not.
So when you first saw him, how did you become involved, if you did, in the adoption process?
So during the adoption process, our greeter had motioned him, Mr. Domingo Rodriguez, to sit at my desk, which I was sitting at, like how I am today before all of you. And I was going to conduct the adoption process. Now, through the adoption process, we explained to them that during the adoption process, we explained to them what everything is, the licensing, the rabies vaccine, how both of those expiration dates are congruent with each other, as well as the microchip, any information that you provide to us through your identification, like driver's license, government, state ID, will go on that microchip. And we just kind of explain like, oh, we're going to send you guys home with a goodie bag full of toys. We explain the whole feeding process. We go over everything, essentially.
Now, before that, did Mr. Rodriguez have the opportunity to view the animals that were available for adoption?
Through my own observations, I believe when our greeter had motioned him, because I was able to observe this, that our greeter had motioned for him to look at the dogs. And that's when he came back with a kennel card, because our process for the adoptions is to come in. It's an open door policy. Anyone and everyone is welcome to look through our adoption floor. The way the process goes, the procedure, grab the kennel card, and then you proceed to the front lobby. Granted, after you had taken the dog out, which we welcome, we have leashes hanging up, and we almost were very enthusiastic and about trying to get the person to walk the dog, which through my own observations and everyone else there that day, that Mr. Rodriguez had not. He insisted that it's okay. But I mean, just to prevent, if the dog doesn't adapt well with life at home, or if anything happens, really, we just want, we want the guest to feel comfortable with the dog that they chose.
Is that typically what you see? Do individuals come in and you said they have the opportunity to leash the dogs?
Yes.
And is there an area where they can take the dogs to be able to interact with them?
Yes, there are.
Are there multiple areas or just one?
There are multiple play yards in animal services. There's a myriad amount of play yards everyone is welcome to take an animal out into.
What do you typically see with respect to people interested in adopting a dog? How do they interact with the animals?
The people that come in and, they look around. Some people just want to come in, take a peek, kind of window shop, if you will. Others just, love animals and they want to take dogs out for a walk. Sometimes if it doesn't really work well, if the dog is too hyper, if its temperament doesn't fit well with the guest that comes in that day, they're more than welcome to check out any other animals. So, I mean, through my own experiences, I've seen, people come in, they don't like, they're so dead set on a dog that they want to take it out. And its temperament is just the complete opposite of the type of dog that they're looking for. And they find a dog that other people would just normally pass up and they fall in love with them.
For the dogs that are available for adoption, do you have any indication of their temperament on the cards that they have?
Yes, so on each and every kennel card, the words are highlighted. I believe there are 3 or 4 different temperament statuses that we have on each kennel card. One is, I guess you could say, very calm, very relaxed, moderate energy. The other is like, I believe, high activity level. And then there's like a middle line between that.
And is that normally a factor when people are looking for dogs to adopt?
It is. If our guest comes in and they read that, they'll know exactly what to expect when it's their responsibility. We give them the opportunity to open that door, open the kennel door, leash that dog. If they're unable to do that and they don't feel comfortable, then they shouldn't be adopting that dog.
When somebody does go into leash a dog to take it out, are there certain ways to enter and exit this adoption, the dog area?
Yeah, so there's multiple entrances and exits. There's an entrance leading directly into the adoption room from the front lobby. And then there are a series of doors that lead into our hallway that lead directly outside the facility where we have the outdoor play yards.
To your knowledge, did Mr. Rodriguez go through any of those doors that lead to the outdoor play yards?
Not through my own observations, no.
And you had talked about how somebody would select the card. Is that essentially saying this is the dog that I want and they take the card?
We give people the incentive to come in to animal services, leash a dog, take it out into the yard and play with them just to see if it's a right fit. And then with that kennel card, if they want to adopt it or if they're just window shopping or just browsing through what we have available, they're also more than welcome to grab that kennel card, come up to the front lobby, ask one of our representatives if they have any questions.
And in this case, how did that go?
So through my own observations, Mr. Rodriguez had spent approximately about 5 to 10 minutes in the adoption room before coming up with the card. That's when I had observed that the greeter had advised to them to go back there, play with the dog, make sure it's fine. I believe I had observed Mr. Rodriguez go back into the dog room, the dog adoption room, and then came back maybe about 10 minutes later. It was a pretty busy day that day. There were only maybe 3 of us working with my trainer included. And then that's when Mr. Rodriguez had came back to the greeter. The greeter motioned Mr. Rodriguez to sit at my desk because my station was next in line.
Are you aware of security footage at Animal Services?
Yes.
Permission to approach foot.
Granted.
Permission to approach the witness.
Granted.
I'm approaching with what's been already entered into evidence as it states 21. Do you recognize this?
Yes.
Is there any writing on this flash drive?
They're my initials.
And on the other side, whose initials are those?
Captain
Maybe
Martin.
it's upside down.
Captain Martin.
Okay, Captain Lindsay Martin. And did you review what's on this flash drive?
Yes,
Is this the footage from Animal Services from that day?
it is. It's the security footage of Mr. Rodriguez entering our facility.
Permission to publish states 21.
Granted.
Starting with this first video. What is this a view of?
This right here is a view of our parking lot facing east.
And in reviewing this footage, have you seen yourself on this footage?
In some of the videos, yes.
Now, ultimately, did you end up helping Mr. Domingo out to his car?
I did. So another service that we provide here at Animal Services, we give guests that come in the opportunity to either purchase or rent a dog crate, which Mr. Rodriguez had requested. So we sold him one. So when we had came back into the lobby after completing all of the adoption paperwork, processing everything, all of that, we had given Mr. Rodriguez the dog to walk outside, and then just as a courtesy, I had carried the dog crate to his truck.
We're gonna come back to that just a little bit. Do you see, just for now, do you see the vehicle that ultimately you end up going to load up the dog?
Yes.
And how many vehicles are in the view right now, specifically in this parking lot?
There are two.
And which is the vehicle ultimately that you end up taking the dog to?
I believe it's possibly, I believe the gray truck.
This footage right here. What is this a view of?
This is a view of me sitting at a desk. I was wearing the blue shirt with the black beanie because I hadn't been granted my customer service uniform, which I'm wearing today.
Virtual witness to allow him to use this pointer. All right, if you could just take this and permission for the witness to stand and indicate to us where you are seen in that footage.
So I'm seen right about here. The entrance to animal services is approximately right around here, this doorway. So
Not entirely sure why this
shown.
is
That's the entrance
necessary,
in which Mr.
except
Rodriguez
showing,
had
yeah,
entered to
he,
our facility. Our greeter station is right about here. That's where I had observed from my desk Mr. Rodriguez interacting with our greeter.
And at what point in time are we here, if you recall?
yeah,
Would
I
this
mean,
be after he had brought
this
you
is,
the title card?
in my opinion,
This
a
is,
bit
yes, this is after he had
unnecessary.
brought us the kennel card. As it appears, Mr. Rodriguez is just sitting down.
Let's see
And
what
at this
this
point,
is.
what is- What are we looking at
Oh.
here?
Oh, this is heartbreaking. This is Mr. Rodriguez walking Dexter to the car. Oh. Here, Dexter, thinking he is coming to his forever home.
So here we are looking in the bottom left-hand corner, Mr. Rodriguez carrying the adoption bag full of goodies, toys, as well as a bag of food in his right hand. In his left hand, he will be holding Dexter's leash, and then following him is myself carrying the crate. And as you can see, you can observe Dexter's temperament, a very calm dog, isn't pulling on the leash, just walking directly side by side with Mr. Rodriguez.
And what does he have around his neck?
Around Dexter's neck is a cone that we send home with them. If they're still on that incision watch, the cone should be on the dog for 7 to 10 days during the incision watch. We advise that they keep the cone on for at least 7 days, and then by the 10th day, they could take it off.
Now, what do we see going on here? For the record, 14:50 and 14 seconds.
So what we're looking at right now, we had approached Mr. Rodriguez's truck from the rear end. He had lowered his tailgate. You might not be able to see it, but from what I recollect that day, he had used the keys on his key ring to tear open the crate. Now, usually the way adoptions happen when we conduct them is if they want to take home a crate, they kind of just throw the crate into the back of their car or truck, and then the dog just hops in. In this case, Mr. Rodriguez is opening the crate, taking it out of the box, setting it up, and then at the end of that video, if it were to keep playing, I'd be walking back to Animal Services carrying the cardboard.
We're in a newsletter with timestamp 14:51:09, and is this a continuation of that previous video?
Yes,
Is this what you're referring to?
yes.
Ultimately, did you learn later that, what did you learn, if anything, about loading the dog in the truck like this?
It was very unusual. Granted, it was my only first week at Animal Services. Well, working up front as a customer service representative, the world of a kennel technician, if you will, is very small compared to the ever expanding world of enforcement and customer services. So I wasn't really aware that it is actually against Pinellas County law to transport a dog in a crate in the back of a pickup truck, or any vehicle for that matter, in a crate without the crate actually being tied down or fixed or fastened to the bed of the vehicle. It also needs a
I'm going to stop you, just without necessarily referencing any law. Did you come to the understanding that
your supervisors indicated that this was not the proper way to transport the dog?
Yes, because I had found it peculiar. This is an experience quite unique. Through my own observations working at Animal Services, I just never would have thought. But regardless, I had came back and made a comment that I found it strange that Mr. Rodriguez had loaded the dog crate with Dexter and then proceeded to transport Dexter.
Now, later, eventually, does Mr. Rodriguez leave with Dexter?
Yes,
Later, does he ever return?
Mr.
Mr.
Rodriguez does return, I'd say about an hour or so after the initial adoption, with the crate in hand, from what I observed.
And is that something that is available on the video footage that the jury can view?
Yes.
And did you all give him a refund for the crate?
We insisted that it's his, he can keep it. We weren't really understanding of why he was returning it to us. And then that's when we had observed from the entrance side in which Mr. Rodriguez was standing next to the greeter, that Mr. Rodriguez essentially moved his hands in a motion that implied that it's okay.
Speculation. Sustained.
Ultimately, based on your interaction with him, did he end up receiving or asking for the refund?
He did not.
Moment to confer. No further questions.
All right, cross-examination? Yes.
Is it standard practice to allow any individual to adopt a dog and take it home while that dog is on an incision watch?
It is standard practice. That's why we always communicate with them that while on the incision watch after being altered, that the adoptee or foster keep that plastic collar or cone on their head.
You don't speak Spanish?
No.
And so you have no way of knowing that the information that was coming from your phone was accurately being relayed to my client?
No.
You made mention of how the dog was transported. My question to you is, isn't it true that you never stopped him from doing that, correct?
I never stopped it just because I didn't see an imminent threat to the safety and welfare of the dog.
And at no point in time when you were interacting with my client, did you have that feeling?
No.
May I have a moment, Your Honor?
Yes.
No further questions.
All right, thank you. Any redirect?
No, Your Honor.
All right, thank you. Let's step down and we'll take our afternoon
Okay.
break so we can recess. for-
I don't know what to add here. Sorry for being quiet, but I mean, this is a very, very clean trial. Very respectful between the attorneys. The judge doesn't have much to do with the occasional sidebar. But other than that, it's all right. Let's move on to the next part. Dun, dun, dun. Oh no, this one doesn't have subtitles.
Dexter found.
Oh.
Yes, sir. Counsel. Members of the jury.
Closing arguments. What we saw earlier was the final witness. Huh. So the defense did not put up a case in chief. They only sought to poke holes into the prosecution's case. And I kind of understand, because who are they going to call? Domingo? John C., what is the defendant's description of events? Dog ran away. The rest is just coincidences. That's it. He claimed the dog ran away. He claimed he looked for it, and he was nowhere near the site where Dexter was found. All of that has since, I believe, been debunked. Yeah, so for me, am I satisfied with the prosecution? I am. I believe that the combination of the evidence they put forward and how they explain the holes in it is a circumstantial case. But I do believe this is, yeah, I believe they reached beyond a reasonable doubt for me. But let's listen to closing arguments.
Dexter was found in April 2024 in the city of Clearwater, tied up to a street post. He was brought to Pinellas County Animal Rescue Animal Shelter, where he stayed there for about a month before he was adopted. He was adopted by this defendant, Domingo Rodriguez. You saw the video from Pinellas County Animal Services of Domingo Rodriguez walking in, going up to the desk, filling out the paperwork. You saw him walk out of that building with Dexter. You saw him put Dexter up into a crate in the bed of his truck and drive away. You can see Dexter in those videos. He's wearing a comb, wagging his tail a little bit, walking along next to his new dad. Dexter doesn't know that his life is going to end within the next 12 hours. Because the next day, on May 11th, 2024, this defendant, in the same truck that he's driving at Pinellas County Animal Services, he's driving that same truck out of Fort DeSoto. He's by himself. Nobody else in the car, nobody in the front passenger seat, nobody in the back seats. He's got a cooler that's big enough to fit Dexter's body in his truck out of Fort DeSoto the very next day after he adopts Dexter. And then 3 days later, Dexter's body is found floating in a clear plastic bag out of the mangroves at the east tip of Fort DeSoto Beach in a secluded area of Fort DeSoto Park. His body, his head is decapitated from his body, he's decomposed, and he's just floating around in the mangroves. That is why we're here today. We're here today because of an aggravated animal cruelty case. And what does that mean? The judge just instructed you on the elements that we need to prove today. But there's multiple counts, and in order to prove all these counts, I'm going to start from count number 2 and work our way up to count number 1. So count number 2 is this: the unlawful disposal of the bodies of dead animals. So for this charge, there's one element: that Domingo Rodriguez disposed of the carcass of any domestic animal by dumping such carcass on any public road or right-of-way, or in any place where such carcass can be devoured by beast or bird. What's important here is that last sentence, as well as the domestic animal. If you remember, whenever Dr. Perlman was up here giving her testimony, I think it was yesterday, I asked her kind of at the very end, is a dog a domestic animal? Dog, she answered yes, dog is a domestic animal. And then for the end of that, in any place where such carcass can be devoured by beast or bird. We brought you witness testimony from Jared Bristol, the fisherman, as well as Mark Warchola, who's the park ranger out of Fort DeSoto, who went out to the scene. It may have seemed silly, it may have not made sense whenever we were asking those questions, but I hope it makes sense now while we were asking certain questions. What kind of animals are over in those mangroves? All kinds of different crabs, raccoons. What about the water? There's fish. What about birds? Are there birds out there? Yes, there are birds. You heard testimony that there were holes that were in the bag that Dexter was found in. Those holes gave access to these other animals. So the reason why we're asking those questions is because we knew we had to prove this part of this charge. You saw the video, and you'll see the video again whenever you go back and deliberate, of Mr. Rodriguez, the defendant, driving into Fort DeSoto 3 days before Dexter's body is found.
Oh, 3
That's
days
how we know that
before.
he's the one who did it. So I'm going to talk more about ID and identification.
I was under the impression that it was earlier that day, but apparently 3 days before, which puts the time of events May 10th, adoption. May 11th, disappearance. May 12th, he got rid of Dexter, and then Dexter was found on the 15th.
As we move forward, because as you know, we don't have any direct evidence. We don't have anything that shows Mr. Rodriguez cutting the dog's head off. We don't have anybody saying, yeah, I saw him do it, but we're going to piece together that puzzle together. And the way we do it is we start with this charge. Mr. Rodriguez's dog was found out of Fort DeSoto Beach. And it was in a place that can be, where that body could be devoured by beast or bird. I'm going to explain the verdict forms to you briefly. Because these verdict forms, there's 2 of them.
And I don't want anybody to be confused. So the first page is going to look like this. Obviously, his name is going to be spelled correctly. Second page is going to look like this. So that charge that I just talked about is the second page, the unlawful disposal of animals. If you believe that we've proved our charge beyond a reasonable doubt, which we have, we're going to ask you to mark section A. Section B is not guilty. The second verdict form brings me to that first charge, the aggravated cruelty to animals. Now, if you remember, Judge Meyer was just instructing you about how there's a lesser included offense. So this is not as simple as just guilty or not guilty. The first option is going to be if the defendant is guilty of aggravated cruelty to animals as charged. The second option is the defendant is guilty of animal cruelty as included. And the third option is the defendant is not guilty. Now, if the charges, whenever Judge Meyer read them to you, of aggravated animal cruelty and animal cruelty sounded similar, it's because they are. The aggravated cruelty to animals is just a heightened version of animal cruelty. And in those instructions, if you believe that we proved aggravated cruelty to animals beyond a reasonable doubt, that's where your inquiry stops. If you believe that we have not proved that charge, but we have proved the lesser included of animal cruelty, then that's your choice. If you don't think that we've proven anything beyond a reasonable doubt, then it's not guilty. But I just want to be clear so we don't run into any problems that this verdict form says check only one. So it's not A and B, it's going to be just A. For that aggravated cruelty to animals charge, we need to prove two things. For the aggravated cruelty to animals charge, we need to prove that Domingo Rodriguez intentionally committed an act to an animal, or owned or had custody or control of an animal and failed to act. And number two, Domingo Rodriguez's act or failure to act resulted in the excessive or repeated infliction of unnecessary pain or suffering to the animal or the animal's cruel death. And we've got a definition of cruelty. Based on the facts that we have, I'm not going to go too much into the definition of cruelty because at the end of the day, we got a dog that doesn't have a head on. I'm going to talk a little bit about how this was intentional and how this was excessive or repeated infliction of unnecessary pain or suffering to the animal or led to the animal's cruel death. You heard testimony from Dr. Perlman. She testified and she did the show and tell in front of you all with the bones. She explained to you all that there were 4 impact marks. Not 1, not 2, not 3, but 4 impact marks that she was able to determine based on her examination of those bones. She explained to you that one of those impacts had what's called a hesitation mark, where there wasn't enough force that was brought down the first time. This was not an accident. There was 1, 2, 3, 4. It was on purpose. Dr. Perlman also told you.
Okay, I don't like that theatrics.
Dexter.
I don't like that at all.
It was a human being, a
Unnecessary.
sharp object, either a machete or a meat cleaver, that caused those injuries to that neck area. That's how we prove. And the 4 times, that's the repeated infliction of unnecessary pain or suffering to the animal. Whenever we're talking about intentionally committed, those kind of go hand in hand because it wasn't just 1, it was 4. She also testified that that hesitation mark, that first impact, could have caused Dexter to be paralyzed. And that's very important in this case because she does not have the whole rest of the body to complete her analysis and determine the cause of death. But I want to emphasize something to you all right now. Dr. Perlman, what she was able to look at was everything from Dexter's neck down, external and internal. She looked at his heart, no issues. She looked at his lungs, no issues. She looked at his stomach, no issues. She looked at his spleen, no issues. She looked at his kidneys, no issues. She looked at his intestines, no issues. She looked at his bladder, no issues. She looked at his bones, no issues, no broken bones, not even a bruise on Dexter's body. For all intents and purposes, Dexter was a healthy dog minus the kennel cough that he had, the doggy cold. My argument to you all is that Dexter's head was likely in the same state as the rest of his body. That if Dr. Perlman had the opportunity to examine Dexter's head, that she would find that he was from the neck up as healthy as he was from the neck down. But unfortunately, we do not have Dexter's head in this case. Criminal defendants are in a very unique situation and a unique position where they are able to determine what evidence is left behind. And in this case, there's no head. And we know that this defendant tried to hide evidence and get rid of evidence when he took Dexter's body out to Fort DeSoto. And I'll get more to that later, but I want you to keep that in the back of your mind. Because that's how we know that it was this defendant who did this act to this dog. I'm going to talk to you some more about some facts that are not in dispute in this case. And these are facts that lead us to know that this defendant is the person who did this to Dexter intentionally, excessively, repeatedly, and on purpose. Fact, The defendant went and adopted Dexter on May 10th, 2024. Video evidence, you're gonna have paper evidence, all the adoption forms, all the adoption paperwork, his name's on it. He's the one who went there.
Thank you, Nate. Becoming a member. Welcome to the Viking crew. I have to get the link to the Discord on my YouTube members page. Thank you for becoming a member. Thank you so much. You now have access to everything member only thing on my channel. And speaking of members only, I have pushed forward the members only stream until I might do it later today. Later today will be the members only stream. So be prepared. Let's say 3 p.m. Eastern time, a members only stream where we go through what's going on with the channel and the plans going forward. All right. Thank you again, Nate.
Fact. The next day, on May 11th, 2024, the defendant is seen entering Fort DeSoto Beach. Fact. On May 14th, 2024, Dexter's body is found in Fort DeSoto at the East Tip Beach. That's fact. After the defendant had already left Fort DeSoto Beach, he was on the phone with Animal Services. They called him. Remember Jesus' testimony yesterday. Mr. Rodriguez, he did not call Animal Services, tell them anything. Animal Services called Mr. Rodriguez, and Mr. Rodriguez told Animal Services that Dexter had escaped and that he had been looking for Dexter. That's after he left Fort DeSoto Beach. That's a fact. There were 4 impacts to Dexter's neck, and those impacts, those were cuts on Dexter's neck that were caused by a human being. Those are all facts that are not in dispute. When you're looking at this case, and when you're making a determination in this case, you cannot just look at 1 fact, or 2 facts, or 3. You need to take everything into consideration. That's why I started with the body being found out of Fort DeSoto first. Because it begs the question, why was he out there? Why was Mr. Rodriguez out of Fort DeSoto Beach on May 11, 2024? Was it because he was going fishing? Was it because he was looking for the dog like he told Animal Services? That doesn't make sense. And what an unfortunate coincidence it must be for Mr. Rodriguez that the place where he is at, the day after he adopts a dog, that 3 days later, that same dog is found dead, decapitated, floating in the water, out of the same park that he was at 3 days prior. It's not a coincidence. Those facts indicate that there is something much more sinister going on in this case. These are facts that indicate that the defendant was trying to cover his tracks, that he was trying to hide evidence. That's how we know that he is the person who is responsible for Dexter's death, and that he is the person who's responsible for cutting Dexter's head off those 4 times. Because that's what's reasonable whenever you look at all these facts together. Because if there was some accident that happened to Dexter, or if Mr. Rodriguez had stumbled across and found Dexter, wouldn't he call the Animal Service and said, hey, this dog I just adopted, this is crazy, his head is chopped off, I don't know what's going on? That's what Jared Bristol did whenever he found the dog out of Fort DeSoto. Immediately called 911. Hey, there's a dog here, and it doesn't have a head and it's floating in the water. That's what's reasonable. What's not reasonable is to say that you're out looking for the dog, driving up and down the beach, because that cell site data, whenever you get to take that back with you, whenever Ms. Shapiro testified, you're going to see all those timestamps, you're going to see all those places where he was. And it wasn't just going from home to Fort DeSoto. That map is going to show you that Mr. Rodriguez, he went to his house, he went over to Gulf Boulevard, drove down the beach, came over to Fort DeSoto, went down to Fort DeSoto, came back up, went back down to Fort DeSoto, and then he leaves and goes home. That's what that map is going to show. Mr. Rodriguez was looking for a place to hide the body. He was looking for a place up and down the beach. He wasn't going fishing. There's plenty of spots for him to go fishing up and down Gulf Boulevard. Plenty of places for him to park, go out on the shore, go out to docks, go out to piers. That's not what he did, because that's not what was happening. He was looking for a place to hide the evidence of the crime that he committed. And then what happens whenever Mr. Rodriguez is confronted with this knowledge that, hey, the dog has been found out at Fort DeSoto Beach, a place that you were at 3 days ago? He must have got out. He got out, he escaped, I was looking for him. I want to talk about those 2 statements in particular. He must have escaped. This is the gate and the hole underneath the gate and the fence that the defendant says that Dexter slipped through, that he escaped through. Now remember, the testimony that we heard throughout this trial that Dexter was wearing a cone. I would argue that even without a cone, Dexter would not be able to fit under this gap. The other thing I want you to pay attention to is that it's not like it's dirt that's down here where he could have dug a hole and given himself a little bit more space because he really wanted to get out of that yard. It's concrete. There's no way for Dexter to have slipped under that fence like Mr. Rodriguez says he does. That is another fact in this case. That's how we know that that statement is untrue. I went out and looked for the dog. I was looking for it. This green flash drive is State's Exhibit 16. Okay, it is the video. You saw part of the video from the neighbors yesterday whenever they were testifying. This is the Ring camera from that neighbor who we had her video up and playing. We showed you part of it, but there's several other videos. Why this is important is because I want you to go and watch all those videos whenever you're back and deliberating. Because it's not just that one video. There's, like I said, there's several of them. You heard testimony that that camera catches motion. And that's how it alerts somebody like, hey, there's something that's on this, and that's why you need to download the video, and that's why you get law enforcement officers. The first video on there shows a male lady who is across the street walking slowly. And that is the motion that set off the Ring camera to say, hey, there's motion outside your house. So it is reasonable to believe that somebody who lost their brand newly adopted dog would be moving at a much higher speed, frantically looking around, making a whole lot more movement than a male lady who's walking across the street. That's some motion that would be captured by that camera, and there's none of it. On all of those videos, you are not going to see Mr. Rodriguez going up and down the street. You're not going to hear anybody yelling, does anybody see my dog? Whistling, trying to clap their hands, get the dog to come back. You heard no testimony that they were knocking on any neighbor's door. Hey, did you see my dog? That's reasonable, but that didn't happen. It did not happen because Mr. Rodriguez never looked for the dog, because he knew what happened to the dog, because he's the one who inflicted that harm on Dexter. It's an inconsistency with his story, and it's backed up by facts. Now, these neighbors who testified, you heard testimony like that one of them had a Justice for Dexter sign in their yard, so maybe there's some bias there. I will give it that. But there's no bias on video. It's black and well, it's not black and white, it's in color, but it's clear as day that Mr. Rodriguez is never going up and down looking. So their testimony is corroborated by that evidence. And that's why you should believe what they're saying whenever they said, he never came to my house. Nobody was out there looking for Dexter. Nobody was calling the dog's name. It's corroborated by evidence that it's facts. You can see it for yourself. While I'm talking about the videos, this is a jury laptop. It's going to go back with you whenever you go to deliberate. This is an old piece of government technology. All right. This is what you're going to use to view the evidence. And Judge Meyer just said that the first thing you're supposed to do whenever you go back there and deliberate is pick a foreperson of the jury. The second thing that you should do is get that computer out, start booting it up, and plug it in, because it does not have good battery and it takes a while to boot up. Whenever you're going through the evidence with the discs and with the flash drives, I also recommend that whenever you plug it in, you drag it off of the flash drive and download it to the computer. That way you can actually view the evidence quickly. So it doesn't have to, the computer doesn't have to talk to the flash drive or talk to the discs. That way you can actually view things in an efficient way. Something that was discussed at jury selection, and I promise I'm almost done, was that the state does not have to prove motive in this case. And frankly, we don't have an answer for why Mr. Rodriguez did this to his brand new dog. I don't want to know what was going through his head whenever he decided to do this to his dog. We may never know what was going through his mind whenever he did this to his dog. But at the end of the day, we need to prove those two elements of the aggravated cruelty to animals and then the unlawful disposal of dead bodies of animals. The way that we've done that is by sort of working backward and forward. From the start of the investigation, at the end of whenever Dexter was found, seeing Mr. Rodriguez pull in for soda with a cooler that's big enough to fit Dexter in it, to Mr. Rodriguez's inconsistent statements, to the time that he went and adopted Dexter. That's how we've proven that case. That's how we've proven that Mr. Rodriguez was covering his tracks. He was trying to hide the evidence, and he didn't think he was going to get caught. So imagine his surprise whenever law enforcement officers show up to his house and say, hey, your dead dog got found. That's when he starts to panic. That's when he starts to make those inconsistent statements. We ask that you find Mr. Rodriguez, this defendant in this case, guilty on all counts. Thank you for your time this week.
Thank you. Does the defense wish to give a closing argument? Yes, sir. You may proceed.
Okay. 22 minutes closing argument. Short, concise. Here's the evidence. Here's what he did. Amazing. You can allow the evidence to speak for itself. Do you hear that, Mr. Lewin, Miss Love, you can perform a trial with the evidence in center. Oh. And now to the defense closing argument. This will be interesting.
May it please the court, Mr. Counsel. Members of the jury, good morning. This case is undoubtedly tragic. A life was lost, the life of a dog named Dexter. We understand and appreciate the gravity of the situation, the sympathies, the disgust. We too want justice for Dexter. Nobody wants to see this happen to any dog, any animal, for that matter. This is a serious case, no doubt about it. These are serious allegations. But that's why your role in this case is that much more important. Because when it comes to a tragic case like this, there has to be proof. The state has the burden. No, the public duty and the obligation to prove my client killed this dog. And they have to do it beyond all reasonable doubt, the highest burden in our justice system. This is tragic. But what's more tragic is wrongfully convicting an innocent man when there's no evidence to support it. No evidence as to who, the what, the where, and the when. At best, they have suspicion. That's not reasonable doubt. That's not guilty. Justice for Dexter, absolutely. But justice for Domingo Rodriguez, too. And while it is understandable to seek justice for such a loss, justice must be based on the facts, not speculation. Justice must be built upon the foundation of evidence, not guesswork, not bias, and certainly not suspicion. Suspicion is speculation, and speculation is nothing more than imagination. You know what the state is asking you to do? Use your imagination, because the facts are not there. Even the doctor said there's a lot of missing pieces to this puzzle. I wrote it down because it was so important. There are, in fact, missing pieces to the puzzle. That's their fault, not ours. They had to put the pieces together to establish a picture of guilt, and they have failed to do that. They're asking you to use your imagination to fulfill and find every element of this offense beyond all reasonable doubt. Members of the jury, this is not Fantasyland or Wonderland. This is not a game. The state has stranded you on a game board and has burdened you with choosing from a whole bunch of possibilities. It's Colonel Mustard in the kitchen with the wrench. This is not Clue. You guess wrong in the game of Clue, you keep playing. No harm, no foul. You guess wrong in this, the real world, when we need facts, when there's a government system in place where they have the burden of proof, it's no harm, no foul. An innocent man's life and liberty is at stake. This is serious. This is not a game. And shame on them for putting you in a position where you have to use your imagination.
Sustain the honor.
They're putting you in a position to use your imagination. Dr. Perlman, it's out of my expertise to pick exactly which weapon was used. They're putting you in a position where you have to choose and fill in the gaps for them. That's not how this works. They're asking you to use your imagination as to who did this. Nobody knows. Their lead case agent. I asked them, is there any direct evidence that you have against my client? No. Okay, how about indirect? The exact question I asked them. No. They're asking you to use your imagination as to where these crimes occurred. Nobody knows. They're asking you to use your imagination as to who did this. Again, nobody knows. Not one person out of the 20 plus people that they brought in here was able to say, that guy right there is the one who did it. On the contrary, what they did, that's my neighbor. That's my father. That's my family member. That's the guy who adopted the dog. We know that. But not one person raised their right hand and said, member of the jury, that's the man who did it. not one person?
Because it's a circumstantial case. Because that would indicate direct evidence. I saw the guy do it. That's direct evidence. The prosecution already explained this is a circumstantial case where they build up a case regarding these are the known facts. May 10th, May 11th, May 12th, May 15th. These are the sequence of events. Here is how it has to have happened. Here is what every piece of evidence shows. Now, would it be amazing if they could put a person on the stand to say, I saw him do it? Yeah. Almost no case has that direct evidence. There are very, very few. And those who have with eyewitness testimony, yeah, remember Relly? Remember Relly in the ASAP Rocky trial? Yeah.
That's lacking. So when the judge instructed you, it's not about the amount of witnesses. I thought for a second they were going to bring everybody in Pinellas County here to ask them if they did this. It's not about how many people came here to testify. It's about the quality of the evidence. And guess what? To be quite frank, all those 20 people said a whole lot of nothing. You heard a lot of nothing from Detective Payton, digital forensic analyst, lead case agent, Deputy Rosenberg, forensic veterinarian, Dr. Perlman. And we'll get into the specifics of their testimony in just a bit. And the 20 other people they brought before you. But let's consider what Detective Payton said. It's pivotal in these types of cases. Who, what, when, and where. Let's use that as a roadmap as I continue with my closing argument. I even asked Detective Payton, okay, you'd agree with me that in regards to these questions, who, what, when, and where, we have no answer. You know what he had to admit to us? Right, we don't. Again, Deputy Rosenberg, a lead case agent. Do you have any direct evidence? Indirect? No. Dr. Perlman, do you know cause of death? I don't. Can't. The dog was dead before the decapitation occurred. The state has to prove that this was done to a live dog. It falls apart. Their own witness told you that the dog was deceased prior to the decapitation. Their star witnesses, or actually our star witnesses. The state carries the burden of proving this case beyond a reasonable doubt that my client intentionally committed an act that resulted in the cruel death of this dog. That's a heavy burden. I want to direct your attention to jury selection. You have to ask yourself, are you in any better position than you are now when this case began? Even the judge told you and gave you the example. No evidence is presented. If you had to find a verdict right now, guilty or not guilty, what would it have to be? Not guilty. Numerous people answered the question. It was asked, does anybody have a problem with that concept? Everybody agreed. You swear to uphold the law and the judge's instruction in this case. You heard it from the judge himself. You have to find the defendant not guilty. What has changed since that statement was made, that conversation at jury selection was made? What has changed between that time and now? Nothing. As a matter of fact, you're in a worse position than you were when this case started. Because I'll level with you. There's always a curiosity, accusations, charges. I get it. But you've heard from everybody here so far. Case is closed. This is the evidence. And nobody is able to determine that it was my client who did this. They're asking you to make a lot of jumps in this case because all they have is adoption, seen at the park, and he made some conflicting statements about how the dog escaped. That's it. That's it. You take those three things, and now they want you to jump, and say, no, he did this. He intentionally committed cruelty, committed decapitation. Members of the jury, let's use common sense. They're basically essentially asking you to find my client guilty because he adopted a dog. That's like finding a husband guilty of murder solely because he was married to, of murdering his wife simply because they were married. That makes no sense. Again, there's nothing linking my client to these crimes. No eyewitnesses, no video footage showing what happened, no forensic evidence, no DNA, no fingerprints, no weapons, zip, zilch, nothing. They brought you and put you in a patchwork of speculation. I want to talk about the where and when. Where the dog was found. We heard from the young fisherman, the young man who found it. He testified that the bag could have been drifted and came from anywhere. Even from the Sunshine Skyway Bridge. The tides move unpredictably. They come in, come out. Yet the authorities said, no, this is where it is. They got rid of common sense almost immediately. Even the young man, wisdom, a wise young man said, you drop a can in the waters, you think it's going to stay there? Remember the jury, that bag was not left at Fort DeSoto. It ended up in Fort DeSoto. They scrutinize my client's visit to Fort DeSoto Park. He told the authorities that sometimes he does some unofficial driving and he took 3 men there. Take a look at the video. The deputy had to admit to me when pressed, yeah, you can't really see in the back. There's 4 doors to that truck. Under the jury. They immediately dismissed his explanation, claiming that there was no passenger seen. That's contradicted by my cross-examination. How about the when? Dr. Perlman spoke at length about decomposition. I questioned her extensively about decomposition. She can't tell you when this dog died. Can't tell you when decomposition started. The state wants, no. The state needs you to believe that this happened on May 11th. Because without that, I don't know what else to say. They need you to believe that this dog was dropped off at Fort DeSoto Park on May 11th. But what about the 12th, 13th, the 14th? But once they set their eyes on my client, the easy target, well, he adopted him up. Then let's narrow this investigation. I don't care about any other cameras in the toll booth. I don't care about anybody else. We got our guy. This is it. Case closed. It's done. Did they do any investigations around the park about witnesses? Did you see anything on the 12th? About the 13th? About the 14th? Nothing was done. And the reason that this is important, especially when we talk about decomposition, right? Because when you take into consideration the warm waters, it's in May, the humidity, the temperature, the clouds, decomposition is accelerated. The state wants you to believe that, no, it's the 11th, and that's for 4 days it was decomposed. No member of the jury. It's probable that somebody dropped this dog off, God knows where. Literally, God knows. Nobody else in this courtroom. And if the state knew, they would have force-fed that to you. Only God knows where this dog was dropped off. And it decomposed, accelerated because of the warm temperatures and warm water, especially in Florida in May. So the decomposition could have started the 12th, the 13th, or even the same very day. Look at the picture. You think that there's air conditioning in the animal control car? They had the dog wrapped in a black bag. It was decomposing on the way from Fort DeSoto Park. When it got to Dr. Perlman, God knows how much it had already decomposed. There's no way of saying that the 11th was the day, or even the 10th for that matter. She was unable to say cause of death. That's the reason why we're here. That's the reason why the state has charged my client. He did this. And she told you, their doctor, I don't know what caused this up. I don't know what else to say. Off the cooler. Remember the jury, I'd argue that's a red herring. You don't know what a red herring is? That's,
Sorry? Objection?
Pretty far argument.
oh, That's a red herring. That's a distraction. No, members of the jury, they want you to take a look at the picture. No, the cooler. Look at the cooler. Remember the jury, the cooler was so dang important. Why didn't you swab it for DNA? Why didn't you check it for foreign hairs and substances? Why didn't you check it for fingerprints? Why didn't you bring the dang cooler to the courtroom? Open it up, beer and ice. Okay. But they made a big stink about it. And they try to get away with an explanation. Oh, well, it's multiple days have passed. Yeah, you claim that this dog was dropped off on May 11th, but you still swabbed its paw because you saw some discoloration. So why that, but not for the cooler? Doesn't make any sense. Makes zero sense. We're starting to see a zero big theme in the state's case. I asked the deputy just to make sure, hey, did you smell anything? Is there bleach? Did you see anything? Did you take measurements? Because if you're going to make assumption and bring serious allegations that May mentioned that the dog could have fit in this cooler, well, let's take measurement. Let's do the things the right way. We're the state of Florida. These are serious allegations. Let's take our job seriously. They didn't do that. Don't get distracted by the cooler. Because if it was very important, it would be here right now. No smell of decay, no smell of bleach, nothing unusual. No evidence, there's no questions asked, nothing about a comb at the house was clean. No weapons, no meat cleaver, no machetes, no nothing. But they got their guy. This is it. But they took trash bags. They analyzed the trash bag. If you want to give that credence, same trash bag that you could, trash bag there in that courtroom that has a knot on it. You can find a trash bag like that at Publix, Winn-Dixie, Walmart, anywhere. No fingerprints, no nothing. But they took the trash bag off the cooler. They had a forensic tech, they measured the trash bag. You saw that. And even after their analysis, there's no match, nothing to, of course there's no match. You go to practically anybody's house here in Pinellas County, they're gonna have a trash bag that looks like that. Well, let's use common sense. Here in Florida, a lot of fish, crab, raccoons, you heard that in the state. And there was holes in this bag when it was found. You think if a deceased animal is floating in the waters of Tampa Bay, it's going to be in the peace and the condition it was found after 4 days? Fish would have got into it, sharks, other animals. The skin was still on the animal when it was retrieved, which means that the dog was not left there the 11th. If it was there the 11th, the 12th, the 13th, or the 14th, you would see signs of fish, animals trying to get to it. Birds. Heck, they brought a charge of improper disposal that could be left in a place of that could be devoured by bird or prey. So you're telling me for 4 days nothing touched this animal? I'd argue that things started getting into the bag. That's why there's holes in it. I guarantee you, if that animal was left on the 11th, like they need you to believe, we wouldn't even have anything to have examined. It would have been gone. Use your common sense, members of the jury. The state also made mention, dog was fine. We don't know that. Dr. Perlman did not send the liver and the gastric content for toxicology. I asked her, is it possible the dog could have ingested rat poison or poison? And by the way, every time that I try to ask her a simple question, it was just a long explanation, a whole lot of nothing, like every one of their other witnesses.
So what are you arguing now, Counselor? That the dog died of rat poison and therefore Dexter got his head chopped off? That's just, nah. Now, he doesn't have much to go on. He really doesn't. So he embellished the few facts he can embellish. I understand, and he's doing a good job. But I don't buy it.
But she says, no, her best explanation was, no, gross evidence. It's a big word. It just means looking at it with your eyes. That's not science. Science is sending it out for examination. She didn't send out any biological samples. She didn't send out any toxicology. God knows what a toxicology report would have discovered. Rat poison, eating something. You know, dogs can't eat blueberries, onions. Nothing like that. Chocolate. A tale old as time. Dogs can't eat chocolate. Nothing was determined what this dog ate while it was roaming the streets. Who fed it? Those are reasonable questions. What would a toxicology report have shown? It was never said. We have a decapitation case, of course. But obviously, the decapitation was not the cause of death. So what was? Don't you think it would have been prudent to further analyze? Give us an answer. You deserve an answer, members of the jury. And it was their job to give it to you. And instead, they've left you with more questions. I agree with the state, at least in one thing, they don't have to prove motive. But by golly, if there was motive, they would have let you know about it. Sure. They don't have a why. They don't have a how. They don't have a where. And they don't have a who. They can't put my client behind a knife, a meat cleaver, a machete. They can't. If you use your imagination, maybe, but that's not what the law says. You have to rely upon the facts and the evidence as they were presented in this courtroom, nothing else. You use your common sense. The judge is never going to tell you that you have to leave your common sense out there, in the room back there. You can use it. But to further support their case, they brought witnesses from the neighborhood. Bias. They had to concede that. They have an interest in this case. How do we know they have an interest in this case? Their questions were prepared for them. They had yard signs protesting my client's face in front of their house. They want you to find my client. Of course, they're going to testify in accordance with what they need. But again, their best case is he said he was looking for the dog, and the video camera doesn't show him looking. He must be guilty. He said he was looking for the dog, and he did it. That's it. I don't need any more. The state, stop bringing witnesses. I'm done. I'm convinced. That's not how this works. There's a double standard in this case. The state paraded my client's family members, his wife, onto the stand. And it was so embarrassing, even the state had to excuse himself when they asked, did you do this? Come on. Come on. That's how you know their state is so weak. They know it. No, we got to exclude other people from doing it. That's absurd. And they want you to believe. No, when his family members say they didn't do it, you need to believe them. But when my client says the dog escaped, you should consider him a liar and find him guilty. What a double standard. Believe his family members when they say they didn't do it. But when my client says something, don't believe him. He's guilty of it. That's hypocritical. We saw some adoption workers come in. They had to admit there's no verbal aggression and physical aggression shown with the dog. And again, three people to say that he adopted a dog, we get it. Crazy world out there. But that's not reasonable doubt. We have a lot of suspicion. And they're banking on it. They don't want you to look at the facts of this case. They don't want you to look at all the doubt. recall during their case in chief, when they showed you one of the first videos, an 8-second video, 8 or 10 seconds of just my client and his car going through in and out of court zone. I made it a point to bring in the whole video. It's in there. It's in evidence. You're going to be able to see it if you want to. What, an 8-minute video. I made the point. Show the whole thing. Show the other cars coming and going. Was there an investigation as to the license plates of those cars? Were those people questioned? No.
No, because even if you argue tunnel vision, you didn't check out all the cars. No, but Mr. Rodriguez lied about being there. And then they found out that he was there.
They just want to show you what this whole case has been. They're very narrowed in. They only want to show you what they need you to believe. They don't want you to see the whole picture. It was me, the defense, that said, no, let's bring in the whole thing. What the state has given you at best is a hunch, an assumption, a theory based on a fallacy. There's classic formal fallacies, logic. Here's a good one. The vet can't find any reasonable explanation for why my dog died. See? That proves that you poisoned him. There's no other logical explanation. That's a fallacy. That's illogical. That's a jump into conclusion. That's doubt. Remember, reasonable doubt applies to every element of the offense. If you have reasonable doubt as to one part of an element of the offense, you only need one. Not guilty. That's what the law requires.
Not
Suspicion
entirely.
is not enough. Throughout the trial, I noticed a little tension, a little eagerness, maybe a little excitement. Oh, the forensic technicians coming. This must be the part where we get the facts. I saw some scribbling. I saw ears pricked up. And after the forensic tech testified, nothing. Oh, the forensic veterinarian. Okay. I felt it. She testified. Detective, digital forensic analyst, decapitated. Okay, here it is. Here it comes. 5,000 messages, couldn't find it. There's a gap in history, but it could have been many things. Updates. That sigh, that anticlimactic feeling of, wow, there's really nothing here, that's real. That's reasonable doubt. This is the main charge. You have it in your packet. It's going to be sent back with you. One thing that's not explicit in these instructions is that you have to prove identity. That is this name right here, my client, Domingo Rodriguez. You got to have some facts to hang your hat on that it was my client that did this. Not that my client adopted the dog. My client did this. There's no facts. So it's not Domingo Rodriguez. Intentional, that's a strong word. Intentional acts. What evidence do you have presented before you that he intentionally, my client, did this? None. Their best evidence is that the doctor said there was multiple hacks. The same doctor who said that the dog was already dead and we don't know the cause of death. If you don't know the cause of death, that means the decapitation was not the cause of death. She said that. She confirmed that. Look at your notes. Decapitation is not the cause of death. That's the only reason why we're here. So there's nothing intentional. The act, what was the act? There's a bunch of possibilities as to what happened. It's crazy world out there. We have no idea. And I argue that the other option, owned or had custody or control of an animal, failed to act. There's been no evidence that he failed to do anything. It's not criminal to not look for your dog. And there's nothing in the instruction that's going to say that. Nothing in the law that the judge is going to give you. And then you have to look at element 2. So if you have any reasonable doubt as to Domingo Rodriguez, or intentional, or the act, the law requires not guilty. Domingo's act or failure to act resulted in excessive or repeated infliction of unnecessary pain or suffering, or the animal's cruel death. We don't know what the death was, so it can't be cruel. We don't know what caused the dog's death. So that portion, that enough requires you to return a verdict of not guilty.
I don't agree by the fact that it took 4 blows, according to the medical examiner. And we don't know how far apart those blows were on Dexter.
And this is the last time I'm going to speak with you. The state has another opportunity to come back up in here, and they're going to discuss some of my points. They may bring up, maybe they won't. Dr. Perlman testified that the first half, whoever did this, calls it paralysis. If you believe that, there's no pain and suffering. If you believe that, which there's no reason to even get that far, to be quite honest. But again, we have the problem. They had no idea who did this, and it was their job to show you. Cruelty, you don't even need to worry about. The state conceded it. They said decapitation. They said it themselves. I'm not just making that up. They said, no, we don't got to worry about cruelty. Remember the jury, the dog had his head decapitated. But that's not what caused the death of the dog. So again, that's more reasonable doubt. It falls again. Let's look at the lesser included. And I'm just going to show it quickly because even the state said it's practically the same thing. And when we mean the same thing, it's just more reasonable doubt. To prove the crime of animal cruelty, the state must prove beyond a reasonable doubt. Domingo, we have an issue with identity. Who did this? Unnecessarily mutilated or killed? Well, we don't know that because we don't know cause of death and we have no evidence that he did this. So you have to find him not guilty of the lesser included.
He's good. He's good at what he does, the defense attorney. But as I said before, he's working with extremely bad evidence. But he does, I would hire him in a heartbeat if I got into trouble in Florida, because he fights like hell for his client. Fights like hell.
Now, the second charge, unlawful disposal of a dead animal, you have to have an issue with Domingo Rodriguez again in all these crimes. Disposed. No evidence that he disposed anything. No evidence whatsoever. Obviously, they're going to say, though, he saw him at the park. Okay, what happened at the park? That's reasonable doubt. Was he with people? Did he go fishing? You saw the fishing pole in the back of his truck. Did he go fishing? Did he drop the dog off there? Did he have the dog? Did somebody else do this? Those are questions. Those are fair questions. They needed to answer them. What happened inside the park? No tire marks, no investigations. No investigation was done at the park. That's assuming that the dog was left there, which we know. Just refer back to the wise words of the young fisherman. You drop something in the ocean, it's not going to stay there. Like a message in a bottle. Get a little bottle, put a little message in there, you drop it somewhere else it goes, probably ends up somewhere in China. The message in that bottle is not guilty. So we don't have public road or right of way, because if just for the sake of argument, if you're to believe that the mangroves were it, the mangroves is not the right of way and it's not a public road. So you're left with in any place where such carcass can be devoured by beast or bird. We do not know where the animal was dropped off or by who. There's no fingerprints, there's no DNA on the back. Nothing. So this has to be a not guilty. There's a lot of people in this courtroom. Don't let them pressure you. Your job is very simple. What are the facts? What are the law? If you have a suspicion, okay, it's fine. But a suspicion is not enough to convict a man whose liberty is at stake. If you're curious, okay, it's fine. You all are human beings, but that's not enough. You need to have facts. And the state is gonna get back up here and they're gonna reiterate. Adoption, seen at the park, and inconsistent statements. Inconsistent statements, you know when those were made? At 2 o'clock in the morning. Oh, he had something to hide, members of the jury. If he had something to hide, why would you let a law enforcement officer in your house at 2 o'clock in the morning, show him inside your house, show him in your back patio? That's not a man who wants to hide something. Because think about it, he was not there at the home. He did not have time to organize his home. He had nothing to hide. It was a law-abiding citizen that went asked if they could come in. He said, yeah, come in. 2 o'clock in the morning, I think my wife left the door open, or he could have got it under. Think about the circumstances when those statements were made. Inconsistent as to how the dog escaped, yeah, I'll give him that. But common in all those explanations that the dog escaped. This is the verdict form. Obviously, the judge may mention that there's a typo error. I wrote the D in to make it Domingo Rodriguez, but it's going to be substantially in the same format. You're going to have to only pick one of these, okay? Based upon the law and the evidence, this C needs to be marked. Not because I'm telling you, but because the law mandates it. The law requires it. There's no evidence here, members of the jury. I can't say it enough times. And the same for the second count. It's going to be B. The defendant is not guilty. Your verdict should not be based upon feelings or emotions. It has to be based upon the cold, hard facts or the lack thereof. And we have a lot of lack in this case. They had a heavy burden and they barely got off the ground. Doesn't matter that they brought 20 people in here. It was a lot of nothing that they testified to. All those witnesses, I argue, we could have called them, and it would have helped their case. There's nothing in their case that establishes that my client is guilty of this offense. And for all those reasons, as I just demonstrated, we're asking that you follow the law and that you find my client not guilty of both counts in this case. Thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Members of the jury, we're going to take about a 10-minute comfort break. We need to do some other business, and then we'll come back in for state's rebuttal close. Thank you. Please take the jury out.
Okay. State's rebuttal. Celestial for deliver near response was it possible gated? Oh, they found Dexter in a plastic bag with his head cut off. No sign of gator attack. Yeah, 30.
As the high members of the jury. Defense counsel is 100% right. The state has the highest burden, and we welcome that burden, and we welcome proving the case beyond a reasonable doubt with circumstantial evidence and testimonial evidence alone. What that means, though, is that we know that we're going to have to bring witness after witness after witness to give a little piece to add to the case. A little piece that we're confident that at the end of closing arguments, you will have the common sense to put those pieces together and find the defendant guilty. If we didn't call in each family member, defense counsel would be up here saying, we don't know who was in the house. We don't know if they did it. You've heard they didn't do it. Most of those family members didn't even hear about Dexter until after he was dead. Until after law enforcement was involved in the case. Defense counsel said, we don't want you to see the whole picture. That could be farther from the truth. You heard from Dr. Broman, you heard from Detective Payton, and you heard from Specialist Seedor because we want you to see the whole picture, even if it's not as pretty as we would like it to be. Let's talk a little bit about Dr. Broman. She said no toxicology was done. Imagine all the toxins, all the poisons, all the gases out there, and she told you there is no one single test hole test. They need to know where to start. And think about how decomposed that body was. As far as the neighbor's bias, at the end of the day, what those neighbors want is justice for Dexter. At the end of the day, what those neighbors want is the best for Dexter. If they're giving testimony purely based on bias, wouldn't we think that they would be up here saying, yeah, I saw him. I saw him do this. I saw him do that. I saw the dog was hurt. But no, they gave you the facts as they knew them because that's what they were.
Excuse me, Your Honor, may the interpreters have a moment to fix the equipment?
Yes.
Thank you. Good to go.
I want to be clear what the state does and doesn't have to prove. The state has alleged that on or between May 10th and May 11th, 2024, these crimes occurred. We're not saying necessarily on May 11th. We're not saying necessarily on May 10th. Sometime in between. You're going to see in the elements. There's nothing that says specifically at this date and this time. The state does not have to prove that. The state also does not have to prove specifically at this address. The state has to prove the elements that come with those charges. And based on the facts that you have, we have proven that. We don't have to prove motive, but ask yourself, why decapitate a dog? A dog who perhaps is already dead. People don't decapitate dead dogs. People don't decapitate dogs. But this defendant, and that's what you heard from the witness stand, this defendant is the only person who had custody and control of Dexter the entire time from 5'10" to 5'11". It doesn't mean that Dexter necessarily was in his sight the whole time, but he's the one who was responsible. He's supervising Dexter. He's the one who adopted Dexter, and nobody else got the head off Dexter. Also, as far as what the state has to prove, we don't have to prove pain and suffering. We have to prove pain or suffering. Okay? Suffering doesn't necessarily have to be physical. It doesn't say that in those elements, in that jury instruction. And you heard Dr. Proman. Dr. Proman didn't say the dog was dead when it was decapitated. She said she couldn't say. And why would we want her to say something, to give an opinion, when she doesn't have just Dexter's head, to have a full picture? Why did the defendant let law enforcement into his home at 2 o'clock in the morning? Well, because he had several days to clean up any messes. We heard the home was immaculate. The backyard, nothing to note either. Why? Because there were several days after this occurred. The interview took place between 5:14 and 5:15. Dexter was already dead and was already dropped off 5:10, 5:11. And finally, the defense counsel has talked about gaps, missing pieces, imagining. I'm going to talk about some gaps, starting with some small gaps. How about the small gap of time between the time that Dexter, the defendant, adopted Dexter, and the time the defendant returned the crate? Now, not cool, not okay that he loaded the dog in that way, and that's how he transported him. But then he brings back the crate. If that's the way he's choosing to transport Dexter, does he not need the crate because he's not going to transport Dexter any other time ever again? He doesn't even stick around to get the refund. Another small gap. My co-counsel already touched on it. That small gap under the fence. Dexter, not only did he have a cone on, he was supposed to wear that cone for several days. The defendant never took off that cone when Dexter was at the house. But Dexter has a little noggin. He has a head. This is not a small little dog. Right? This is not a dog that's going to fit under that small gap. Another gap. How about the small gap of time between Dexter's adoption and the time that Dexter goes missing? This defendant adopted and lost a dog within less than 12 hours. Lost a dog. Another gap in the defendant's timeline, specifically when deputies asked about when he went to bed. He told them 10, 11. When did you wake up? 677. He admitted the fact that he was up. He was up in the middle of the night. There's an outgoing call that shows his cell tower, the cell site shows the device's location at 12:28:55 on May 11th, 2024. There's another one, another data point at 12:29. Again, this is May 11th, in the middle of the night. He's at this home. And whose home is this? This is the home of the family members that you heard from. Several of them were from this home. They testified to this address, and they testified, I did not cut the head off that dog. They also testified, I didn't know about the dog. I didn't know about the dog until law enforcement was involved. Those two people were Fermin Rodriguez and Nea Conde Martinez. They didn't know about the dog. They were the ones living at that home at the time. How about maybe what you might call the gap, the notch, the indentation, that hesitation mark? That hesitation mark caused by something happening, something going wrong with coming down with that first blow. How about a dog moving when you come down with that first, when a person comes down, when the defendant comes down with that first blow? That could cause that hesitation mark. And as far as paralysis, would that prevent suffering? No, not necessarily. Paralysis doesn't mean entirely paralyzed. It doesn't mean he's not still aware of what's going on and what's happening to him. Paralysis, physical paralysis, does not paralyze Dexter's fear, Dexter's emotion, Dexter's suffering. How about, this is a crucial gap, the gap in time on the defendant's phone, his data, his search history, a big, and maybe not big in length, crucial, big gap. The entire trial, you guys heard, you're members of the jury, you all heard me and my co-counsel asking about May 10th, May 10th, May 11th, May 11th, over and over and over again. And when is it that his phone doesn't have any search history? May 10th through 12th. Finally, this is maybe not so much a gap, but a distance. The distance between the defendant's home and where Dexter is ultimately found. This distance is not a coincidence. In fact, what defense counsel is asking you to do, they're asking you to speculate. They're asking you to believe that this defendant was so unlucky that first he adopts a dog, he's so unlucky that that dog goes missing within 12 hours. And then he's so unlucky that a random person finds the dog. And he is even more unlucky that he finds the dog and he decapitates his dog. And now defense wants you to believe that he's so unlucky that that random person who decapitated his dog now left the dog miles and miles away at a very specific location. And he's so unlucky because just coincidentally, he also goes to that location at the time that his dog is missing. I will concede he is unlucky. He's unlucky that he didn't cut off the microchip with Dexter's head. Because if that microchip wasn't there, who would know who Dexter belonged to? Who would know that headless, floating dog belonged to? So he's unlucky in that regard. Members of the jury, the state asks you to rely on your common sense. And if you feel that there's any gaps in the evidence, fill that gap with common sense and find this defendant guilty on all counts. Thank you.
All right. In just a few moments, you'll be taken to the jury room by the bailiff. The first thing you should do is choose a foreperson who will preside over your deliberations. The foreperson should...
Okay. Rebuttal argument. I mean, for me, it's a circumstantial case. But the circumstances all point to Mr. Rodriguez. And the disturbing fact, the sequences of events, and more or less the exclusion of anybody else. Yeah, I have to say that for me at least, the state reached its burden.
See to it that your discussions are carried on in an organized way and that everyone has a fair chance to be heard. It is also the foreperson's job to sign and date the verdict forms when all of you have agreed on a verdict and to bring the verdict forms back to the courtroom when you return. During deliberations, jurors must communicate about the case only with one another and only when all jurors are present in the jury room. If a juror goes to the restroom, the deliberation should stop until the juror returns. You are not to communicate with any person outside the jury about this case. Until you have reached a verdict, you must not talk about this case in person or through the telephone, writing, or electronic communications such as email or any other means. Do not contact anyone to assist you during deliberations. These communications rules apply until I discharge you at the end of the case. If you become aware of any violation of these instructions or any other instruction I have given in this case, you must tell me by giving a note to the bailiff. Many of you have cell phones, tablets, laptops, or other electronic devices here in the courtroom. The rules do not allow you to bring your phones or any of those types of electronic devices into the jury room. And it says kindly leave those devices on your seat. But what we're really going to do is have the bailiff collect them from you in the jury room, and they'll put them in a little basket or box outside the room. And they will be guarded by the bailiff while you deliberate. If you need to communicate with me, send a note to the bailiff. If you have voted, do not disclose the actual vote in the note. If you have a question, I will talk with the attorneys before I answer. So it may take some time. You may continue your deliberations while you wait for my answer. I will answer any questions if I can in writing or orally here in open court. During the trial, items were received into evidence as exhibits. You may examine whatever exhibits you think will help you in your deliberations. These exhibits will be sent into the jury room with you when you begin to deliberate. In closing, let me remind you that it is important that you follow the laws spelled out in these instructions in deciding your verdict. There are no other laws that apply to this case. Even if you do not like the laws that must be applied, you must use them. For more than 2 centuries, we have lived by the Constitution and the law. No juror has the right to violate rules we all share. May I have the attorneys to the bench briefly, please?
And a sidebar. Sidebar counter 10 in the entire trial. 10. Oh, 10. And that brings us to the final part of this.
Could you please bring the jury?
Yes. Deputy
The verdict.
Deputy Davidson, bring the jury.
Now, they were out for roughly 2 hours, the jury, before they reached the verdict. Uh, 4 days. This trial was 4 days. Started Tuesday, ended Friday.
Your Honor, the jury is present with the verdict. All right, thank you. Mr. Davis, you're a foreperson, I presume?
Yes, sir.
All right, if the jury's reached a verdict, if you could please hand the forms to the bailiff. The bailiff, please hand the forms to me. Thank you. Okay. Madam Clerk, please publish the verdict. Panel, please rise.
In Circuit Court, Pinellas County, Florida, Criminal Division in the case of State of Florida versus Domingo Rodriguez, case number 2404646CF, in the charge of aggravated cruelty to animals, the jury found as follows. As a defendant in this case, the defendant is guilty of animal cruelty as included. As to the charge of unlawful disposal of dead animals, we the jury find as follows. As to the defendant in this case, the defendant is guilty of unlawful disposal of dead animals as charged. So say we all sign by the 4% of the jury.
Guilty on both counts. Guilty on both counts. Now, as you see, there are 10 minutes left. So I'm wondering if they go to sentencing directly or if it is just post-trial hearing. Barb, oh, thank you, Barb, for gifting 5 memberships. Thank you so much. To Mike L, 901 Don Diva, to Wana D, the Nidus Touch, and to Catty Did. You now have access to all my members only content. And later today, I will have a members only stream where I go through what happened with the channel, what's going to happen going forward. Starts at 3 p.m. Eastern Time. Thank you so much, Bob.
Thank you. Defense, please be seated. Would either counsel like the jury to be polled?
Yes, Your Honor.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Will you please poll the jurors and use the juror number, please?
Yes, Your Honor. Juror number 1, are these your verdicts? Juror number 2, are these your verdicts? Juror number 3, is this your verdict?
Yes.
Juror number 4, are these your verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 5, are these your verdicts?
Yes.
Juror number 6, are these your verdicts?
Yes.
Thank you. Members of the jury, your service has concluded. I'm about to read you your final instruction, and then you'll be free to go. It's not much, but I have a certificate for each of you, signed by our chief judge with all the judges listed on the certificate. I also have a letter from me thanking you for your jury service. The law doesn't permit me to comment one way or another on a verdict, but I am allowed to comment on the service of a jury and your professionalism. As I stated earlier, I guess a few days ago now, this is an extremely important process, okay, to your community, for your state, and for your country. This is a cornerstone of our constitutional democracy, and I thank you very much, and I hope you look back on this service and say, hey, I did something that mattered, and you certainly did. And I'm allowed to comment on your jury service. You were on time every day, you were professional and attentive, and I thank you. I have this final instruction for you, then you'll be free to leave. The deputy's going to escort you out, make sure you have all of your stuff. If you need anything from me for work or school or anything like that, or you just want information, call my office. We're happy to give you that information. Also, if you ever just want to come down to the courthouse, I extend this offer all the time. These are your courtrooms, and you have a right to come down here and see what we're doing. And I invite you to come down and watch the process. But with no further ado, ladies and gentlemen, I wish to thank you for your time and consideration of this case. I also wish to advise you of some very special privileges enjoyed by jurors. No juror can ever be required to talk about the discussions that occurred in the jury room except by court order. For many centuries, our society has relied upon juries for consideration of difficult cases. We have recognized for hundreds of years that a jury's deliberations, discussions, and votes should remain their private affair as long as they wish it. Therefore, the law gives you a unique privilege not to speak about the jury's work. Although you are at liberty to speak with anyone about your deliberations, you are also at liberty to refuse to speak to anyone. A request may come from those who are simply curious or from those who might seek to find fault with you. It will be up to you to decide whether to preserve your privacy as a juror. With that, you're excused. Thank you very much. Have a nice weekend. Folks. Yes. Thank you. Would you please present your client at the podium?
Yes, Your Honor.
Sorry?
I'm going to get a statute of the lesson.
You can get that from the secretary.
I need a statute number for the lesson.
It's going to be 828.12 subsection 1.
828.12
Subsection 1.
All right, does anyone have any legal cause to show why a sentence ought not to be pronounced in this case?
At this time, no.
No, Your Honor.
All right, very good. No legal cause having been shown why sentence ought not to be pronounced in this case, the court will now entertain any submissions or evidence relevant to a sentence to be imposed in this case. He stands convicted of 2 misdemeanors. My understanding is his maximum incarcerated sentence would be a year in the county jail for the count 1 and 60 days in the county jail for count 2. Is that correct?
That is correct, Your Honor.
All right, and what's
I thought it would be, oh, for misdemeanor. I thought it was up to 5 years. That's strange.
sentence is the state seeking at this time?
The state is seeking a maximum on each count consecutive.
Okay, and then monetarily, it's a $500
I
fine.
also
fee for
thought
cause.
they charged him with a
There
felony.
is a enhancement on the misdemeanor animal cruelty fine.
I need to look it up.
Okay, but not something that requires special finding?
No, Your Honor.
Okay.
I have my fee schedule.
Your Honor, based upon my reading of statute, it's an or on the $5,000 monetary fine.
Okay. Tell me that again, Mr. Zamora.
If you have a statute on the way that it's worded, Your Honor, it's, and I'm just going to read the last line, commits animal cruelty and misdemeanor of the first degree punishable as provided in section 775.082 or by a fine of not more than $5,000 or both. I apologize. So it's a $5,000 fine.
Okay. All right, so the state is seeking maximum incarceration of the defendant with required financials assessed and lien. Are there any invest costs?
There are $875 to the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office.
All right, and does the defense wish to be heard on sentencing?
Yes, Your Honor.
And your client will be given an opportunity to allocate if he wishes to do so once you're done or before you're done at your discretion. Go ahead, sir.
Yes, Your Honor. Your Honor, based upon what we know, there's no prior criminal history. He's gainfully employed. He has a family that he lives with and resides with. No priors that we're aware of. And we'd be asking for a probation sentence. We don't want, there was no offer related in this case. So we were kind of forced to go to trial. So I don't want this to be a situation where not that it would be a situation, but I don't want public pressure or us going to trial to be used against my client. We understand the ambiance of this case. However, we'd be seeking a probation sentence with anger management, the $5,000 fine, community service hours.
Yeah. Would a year in prison or jail help this guy? I don't think so. Yeah, I think this guy under probation and, as he said, anger management and everything, I do believe that is unless the court decides for a year in prison plus 10 years on probation. It may be, maybe community service. No matter how we feel about Mr. Rodriguez, if he only gets a year in prison, he won't change. Anger management, community service, probation. So he have eyes on him for the next 10 years. I think that would be a better result.
You name it. But I believe a maximum sentence in this case to run consecutive would be against what would be just and fair in this case. And I stand by, my prior objections and my rulings.
Okay. All right, well, based on the jury's verdict in this case, does the defendant wish to make a statement?
Can I inquire with him, Your Honor? And Your Honor, just so we're clear, you reserved ruling on the second JOA. Have you made a ruling on that?
No, I am going to deny the second judgment of acquittal motion.
Yes, Your Honor. May I have a moment to speak with my client?
Yes. May I see the verdict forms on it? Thank you. Does he wish to make a statement?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Well, based on the jury's verdicts in this case, at this time, I hereby adjudicate you to be guilty of animal cruelty, first-degree misdemeanor. I hereby adjudicate you to be guilty of unlawful disposal of dead animals as charged, a second-degree misdemeanor. The court does not believe probation is appropriate in a case like this. The court believes that what was proven to the jury was a horrific act of violence perpetrated on an animal. We got to see video evidence that that animal appeared to have nothing wrong with it shortly before its death. I think one video depicts the animal leaving in a I don't recall what the witness said, but in a happy mood, going off to his next adventure in life, and then he's horribly killed very soon thereafter. And then his don't know what came first, but again, his body is further disgraced in the way he is disposed of. So, given those facts, the court believes a maximum carceral sentence is wholly appropriate, and I do at this time sentence you to 364 days in the Pinellas County Jail on count 1. Count 2, I sentence you to 60 days in the Pinellas County Jail. Those sentences will run consecutively to one another. So the maximum incarcerated sentence is essentially 1 year and 60 days, but the 364 is due to jail calculations. How much time does this gentleman have in custody?
He has 1 day.
I'll give you credit for the day you've already served toward the sentence. When you get out, obviously you will not be on probation. You'll need to take care of these financial conditions or they'll follow you around and cause you issues. $500 fine, fee, and court costs is assessed as to, this was a 2-count information. So that'll be assessed on the lead count. And of that amount, 132 is discretionary on adjudication. There'll be a $100 cost of prosecution assessed, along with the invest cost of $875 to the sheriff's office. There'll be $5,000 fine assessed that's required by statute. And I believe that covers all the financials. They'll all be set as civil judgment liens against you. And Mr. Zamora, you need to stay on as counsel of record until the notice of appeal time runs out. Then if he is going to pursue, you have to file the notice of appeal if he does that. If you do.
Let's go back and listen.
An animal. We got to see video evidence that that animal appeared to have nothing wrong with it shortly before its death. I think one video depicts the animal leaving in a I don't recall what the witness said, but in a happy mood, going off to his next adventure in life, and then he's horribly killed very soon thereafter. And then his don't know what came first, but again, his body is further disgraced in the way he is disposed of. So, given those facts, the court believes a maximum carceral sentence is wholly appropriate, and I do at this time sentence you to 364 days in the Pinellas County Jail on count 1. Count 2, I sentence you to 60 days in the Pinellas County Jail. Those sentences will run consecutively to one another. So the maximum carceral sentence is essentially 1 year and 60 days, but the 364 is due to jail calculations. How much time does this gentleman have in custody?
He has 1 day.
I'll give you credit for the day you've already served toward the sentence. When you get out, obviously you will not be on probation. You'll need to take care of these financial conditions or they'll follow you around and cause you issues. $500 fine, fee, and court costs is assessed as to, this was a 2-count information. So that'll be assessed on the lead count. And Of that amount, 132 is discretionary on adjudication. There'll be a $100 cost of prosecution assessed, along with the invest cost of $875 to the sheriff's office. There'll be $5,000 fine assessed, that's required by statute. And I believe that covers all the financials. They'll all be set as civil judgment liens against you. And Mr. Zamora, you need to stay on as counsel of record until the notice of appeal time runs out. Then if he is going to pursue, you have to file the notice of appeal if he does that. If you do pursue an appeal and you can no longer afford your services, you need to make sure that you get him back in front of me talking about whether or not a public defender will be appointed. But at this time, that is the judgment and sentence of court. State, did I leave anything out?
No, Your Honor.
Defense, did I leave anything out?
No, Your Honor, I just want to renew my prior motions and objections.
They're all preserved for the
Yes, sir.
record. Mr. Rodriguez, that's the judgment and sentence of this court. You'll begin your serving your sentence immediately. You have 30 days to appeal. Good luck.
And Your Honor, we just wanted to make sure with that, were announced. If the invest costs.
I did announce it on the 875.
Okay, and now he is off. The jury has spoken. And the judge said a year plus days in prison. I would have preferred probation for a decade with community service and anger management. But in his case, I do not think jail will do any good for then he will be out again. And who knows what he will do. There is a black market for dogs. Yeah, but I don't think the judge sentenced him with to 1 year and then probation. Yeah, jail might be much worse than prison. So 424 days and over 5,000 in fines. In this particular case, I would have preferred probation. Somebody having an eye on him all the time. Now he will be in jail for a year and some days, and then he will be out with no supervision. Don't think that. But for Dexter got justice, I believe. And hopefully he's doing fine in doggy heaven without pain, no shelter, shelter of course, but no, you know what I mean. Roaming free, running free. And that puts an end to the Florida versus Domingo Rodriguez trial, the Justice for Dexter trial. And I will see the members in about 3 hours in a members only stream. Keep a lookout. I will post it within half an hour. And then I will make some video updates on the latest in the Melly trial and YSL trial and other updates I've been missing out on. Past month, I've had I got from a bad cold to pneumonia. Now, according to the checkup Thursday, I'm healthy again. Still, I have to replenish my energy and stuff. But I will talk more about that in the members only stream at 3 p.m. Eastern time. But everybody, thank you. Thank you for being here. Thank you for allowing me to do this. Without you, this channel would have a hard time. But thank you so much. Thank you guys over at Rumble hit the thumbs up. Thank you, you over in X. Follow me there. And thank you, you guys here on YouTube. Thank you so much. From me and Mr. Jingles, until later, have a good one. See ya. Bye-bye.
Dexter ran through fields so wide, chasing dreams with endless pride. Saved him from the stormy tide. Now he runs by angels' side. Barked at shadows in the rain, never knew a day of pain. Now in heaven, free from chain, we'll see you, Dexter, once again. Raise a toast for loyal friends whose love and spirit never ends. Dexter's journey's just begun. In doggy heaven, there's no end. He could sense the love we shared in his eyes. The world lay bare. Now he leaps without a care in doggy paradise somewhere. No more tears and no more strife. In the stars he finds his life, running fast through fields of light. Dexter shines forever bright. Raise a toast for loyal friends whose love and spirit